in the meantime, while we get Thor in here, I do want to go over also today. There's other news, which including the patch notes.
Yep.
So let's look at that really quick. Eve Online patch notes. Whatever. I'll figure it out eventually. Give me 1 second. This is something I probably should have had planned out, but I was too busy. I spent most of the morning trying to figure out, make sure I had everything lined up about the last week. Okay, so this isn't it. This isn't it. Click on that. Patch notes. Yay. All right. So, couple big notes. The Aura now has a animated avatar. This is a big change because it represents a new technology that they've been working on for a couple of years, which they're hoping to roll out more and more. So I see this as almost like a tech demo more than anything. So we should see, like, with this happening, I expect to see more things involving like career agents, other missions, even maybe your own avatar or, you know, whatnot, being able to see animations and more, you know, like more immersive, being able to see who you're talking to and who you talking. Either way, this does not seem to suggest that talking in stations is coming or walking in stations is coming, for the record. Also, G244 now has a new dramatic interior, which is why we're there right now. It's pretty cool. It's got a lot of cool doodads. This is a really big one, and I hope to talk to Maldavius about this a lot. So basically, the 24 contiguous internal systems or internal and border systems of Pochven now no longer require any standings to get within. So the only standings that are required is you now need 7.0 standings to get into the home systems. This doesn't change standings for docking or any of that kind of stuff. But what this does is it makes it so that pro-Edencom forces that want to invade into Pochven or run the sites in there, or really anybody who wants to, you know, go into Pochven, you're free to actually travel between the systems, which should help people who want to attempt to engage with Pochven better. We'll see how that plays out. It also makes it so that it's significantly easier for people to be able to use Pochven as a mode of transportation. For Killa, yes, I actually believe that the EOM are going to be ultimately exposed as the people behind the Dreadnought attacks at this point. Okay, so updated LP store. I sent one of my goons over to check out the LP store, so I haven't actually looked at it myself. But what we found was that while the LP price didn't seem to be adjusted much, it's the secondary items that are necessary to purchase things that ended up being affected the most. And so the relative value of the different Triglavian loot that you get for killing Trigs as a pro Edencom player, that is the biggest change that we see in this change so far. I think CCP is behind the Dreadnought attacks. That's probably a good theory. Structures can no longer be transferred to a corporation with negative wallet balance. I thought it was hilarious that people were like, you know, rip frat, but whatever. So there's new window configurations, and this has got a lot of people. So there's a couple things to note with this window thing. Let me actually, so like if you come here, you'll see that there's now this button, enable always above full screen windows. So if you like, you just opened up like planetary industry, whatever. This is a full screen. It makes everything go away. And like it used to be that like they sit on top of it. And so you have to close everything. But now you can click this and make the decision. So now if I open up this PI window, this stays on top, even though there's a full screen thing on. So that's pretty cool. And then the other thing is that it used to be that like when you pinned a window, which would be the same as locking it, it changed to the transparency. So people really have associated those two things together. But now pinning it, i.e. making it so it can't be moved or changed in size, and changing its transparency has been swapped or has been moved to two different things. So if you right click on a window, you can disable the light background or enable the light background to make it more or less transparent if you have high enough quality shaders going. So I hope that helps with that or understanding those changes. What's up, Tempest? There are some bugs involving this, from my understanding. Like now the probe window is right justified, and that's freaked a lot of people out. I don't think any of these stood out as being too important. Yeah. Other than that,
No, I think for gameplay, the biggest changer was the removal of standings to use the gates within Pochven, with the exception of getting in to the home systems, because this opens up so many possibilities for people that want to have standings. Because before, if you didn't have enough standings, you'd have to take a filament in. If you were unlucky, there were no combat sites, there were no wormholes, you would just have triglavians and Edencom. You'd have to wait 15 minutes, filament out, then wait another 15 minutes, then filament back in or find a
right.
wormhole and hope that you have content there. So now it's easier to find sites if you want to gain standings, and it will help. Like if you have a big group and you decide that some take a wormhole, other take a filament, it's easier to catch up.
Right.
Or people, if they're late, that they can link up with everybody else.
No, it's absolutely true. And so to answer Nth Dimensional's question, he's saying, how will the Pochven change help people who use it for travel? The answer is that each system is located in a different physical location in New Eden, and therefore, like, it used to be that you would use a border filament and hope that you got your Anichi, and if you got one of the system next to your Anichi, you could potentially jump over if you've got 1.0 standings. But if you got in one of the other border systems, you may not be in as advantageous of a position. Now, it ultimately doesn't matter where you land. You could theoretically navigate to the correct system that you want to filament out of. And so somebody's disagreeing with the fact that you needed to constantly filament in and out. You're absolutely right. You didn't need to, but we're talking about from like invaders' perspective, people that didn't already have standings to be able to navigate around themselves. Also, if they're yeeting in, chances are they didn't have the way to probe themselves out, or because of the fact that the statics in Pochven are pointing inward than outward, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you could even probe out the wormhole, or where it will lead locally. So, yeah, you could theoretically not wait if you want to, but a lot of people just ended up doing so anyways.
Yep, and with all the, by the way, with your earlier part about the moving around, and if you have the mapping tools with wormhole connections, you can easily see, okay, if I go into this high sec system, low sec system, whatever, I get into Pochven, then I move to that system, then I've got a wormhole over there.
Mm-hmm.
And because it leads to so many different wormhole systems, different null sec systems, high sec, low sec, there's a lot of options for a completely new way of traveling.
That is, of course, assuming that Strybog doesn't have every single gate camp, bubble camped every single day, which, we'll find out how it goes. So far, so deadly. But
The game has changed, so we'll see what the future brings and how different players and player groups are going to respond.
it's absolutely true. It is an interesting change, but it isn't the only interesting change. The patch notes were thin, but if you look, this patch was huge. So uh, let's look at that. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, I'll look at it afterwards. All right. Uh, yep. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so as I was saying, so there's 218 new items. We're going to break down a few of them and look at them, and then there's some strings that are valuable to look at, and it'll give us a preview as to what is coming. It is worth noting that everything that we're about to be talking about, even though I'm looking at it on HoboLeaks, it is actually in Sissy now. In fact, let's not even look at it on HoboLeaks. Let's do this. Let's go. Let's start with this. If I open up a notepad and close the Chrome browser, there we go. So I can go in here and new note, Eve universe note, whatever. I can paste this here and look, here's the new Aegis proximity mine. Don't know what it's for yet, but it's just was added to the game. So to that same end, we can see all of the other stuff that on the HoboLeaks. So we'll just look at it over there to be easy. But this is stuff that is on Tranquility right now, worth noting. They could turn it on at any time. So we see Aegis stuff, Aegis not Edencom, which is worth noting. You see a scanner that's designed to go after cloaking devices. People have suggested that this could potentially be a test or a sign of the anti-cloaking camper devices that should be rolling out sometime this quadrant. There is security vaults, which is obviously the thing that you're going to want to get access to. Hold on. Sorry about that. They say hi, Dad.
Good love, kids.
All right. Anyway, so we have, and then we have these extra keys that are supposed to lead to the factory. So we're not sure exactly what this means. I actually suspect that this is just going to be a new way to gain like Edencom blueprints and Edencom stuff. And then there is these drone controlled wreckage, Overmind Nursery, and there is some other road drone stuff down here. However, the language of the road drone stuff puts it as things that should be in Pochven. So this actually looks like a new road drone site in Pochven, whereas the Aegis stuff, we actually really don't know. There is an Aegis security Gunstar, which is different than an Edencom Gunstar. We're not 100% sure why this is. Again, if Edencom is being like broken up or having less support, then it makes sense that the Aegis themselves will have their own branded stuff now. Unclear where that's going to be used in the game. And then finally, there's also these, or not finally, but there's these EOM guys. Not only do the EOM, are there tons of rats, which is what you would see normally in an event, but specifically you see these EOM stolen Sino beacons, EOM stolen factory outposts. It also says that Equilibrium of Mankind, there in one of these descriptions, there's specific references to them fielding dreadnoughts. So it really seems like these are the places. These sites are where we will be attacking during the event that is the follow-up of whatever the attacks that have been going on this week. So I believe that EOM will be exposed, that this Sino beacon is the illegal Sinos that they've been using, that these shipyards are where they've been building their dreads and deploying them, and that we will be sent out to go blow them all up as part of the next event. And then this Aegis stuff could be totally separate. And the road drone stuff would be separate too, but in Pochven. It is also worth noting that there is infested capital wrecks. Not sure what these are for yet. Again, looks like stuff involving Pochven. And there's also these nursery pods, which look weird and a little bit like the proximity mines. So we'll see if those get used in Pochven soon. It is also worth noting that Cat's Lear Day is coming this week. So in 2 days, which is probably when the Equilibrium of Man attack will happen, or our attack on them. And as part of that, we will be getting Glamourix boosters, which is the good way to get standings quickly, especially for mission runners. Or for those of you who needs their standings for Pochven. Oh, wait. For those people who needed Pochven standings but don't anymore. So, sorry about that. I am going to try to get Thor in here now. I mean, Maldavius.
Yep, in that case, I'll be tagging out in case for the interview, because no need to get any bias or anything else. Each candidate deserves their own spot and undivided attention.
Absolutely. Yeah, we kind of consumed all of our extra time for sure.
Oh, that's okay. Take care with the
Thank you.
interview, and talk to you later.
Absolutely. Thanks for hanging out, Dutch. That was Dutch Gunner, who's also running for CSM. We have an interview up on the YouTubes now. His is up. By the way, I am actually, so when I record, every interview will be done live for CSM interviews. But I won't necessarily post them on YouTube the same day. I'm actually just kind of putting them out on days that I'm not going to be recording something else. Hey.
Hey.
So in order to give you your full hour as you deserve, we probably should kind of jump straight into the interview, unless you want to. So I'm going to give you a choice. We can either talk about the changes now, and then we can do our CSM interview another day, or we can jump into the CSM interview right now, and we'll probably have to. That'll all we have time for.
Honestly, like we can talk about the changes that, and
Awesome.
or we could talk about both. Like I don't, yeah, either way is super fine with me. There's a lot going on right now. I know people want to talk about the changes. I think that that's something that's super important, especially for Triglavian space right now. It's ridiculous, and we're in the middle of a fight for it too. It's awesome actually.
Yeah, I think that that's the bigger value. Ironically enough, actually, last week I had my CSM interview with Arcia scheduled, and then the lore event happened. So like we were like, you know what, we're not doing the CSM interview today. So it's just kind of more of the same. Okay,
so
me to
get my cam on, by the way.
I can't. Yeah, if you want to do that, I can throw you up.
That
for
works.
Sure. One second, let me. I was just showing off pieces of the patch at the same time.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of new stuff in there. They're adding a whole ton of stuff. It's a massive patch, really small patch notes. Notice that.
Yeah. We were just talking about that. I was like, there's the things that they told you about, and then there's all the crap that they snuck in. So it's going to be important.
Yeah,
there
absolutely.
We go. All right, we got your mug on there.
Cool. What up?
So, hey.
Apparently, I'm quiet, is what they're saying. You might want to check your audio level, maybe, because I got it maxed out on this side. I'm not sure.
I'm gonna mute my alerts. Yeah, they can't hear you. Oh, no. Try now.
Hello, can you guys hear me much better now? Is it about the same volume?
That should be fine.
Hoping so.
All right. Okay. So last week, so we just got done basically covering the lore events of the last week, the various capital attacks, the things that happened in between, which led up to the announcement of better foundations, right? Which is the next quadrant.
Quadrant, yeah.
Which started today with today's patch.
Yeah.
And
patch.
we talked about the patch notes, but you are the head of the Strybog clade, which is by far the most aggressive liver, a Pochven operation, the biggest, the people most committed to, like you've been committed to living in Triglavian space, going native and being full Triglavian longer than anyone else. You've committed to it bigger and harder than everybody else. And so,
we live in space hell. Yeah. Yeah. That's what we do.
And, the obviously there's other Triglavian groups, but Strybog is the big wait around a lot of the time, and that would be your group. And you also are you're the only group with actual large structures at this point, right?
Yeah, we have, as of today, the other Asbel has fallen. That happened maybe an hour ago. So we
Oh.
have the only Asbel in Pochven, and we have the only Tatara in Pochven. We've got a number of citadels all around the triangle. We own a Titan in Pochven, which is the only known one right now, but I bet there's others lurking in the waters out there. It's a hell of a thing. We have completely bought into the Triglavian invasion. We've done everything we possibly can to make this place livable. We, before the changes today, had a number of agreements for good fights in here and actually had a lot of cool engagements with Rote Capel and other parties like Cat for You, Como Russians. And it's been awesome. It's been a really cool place to live, and it is not for the faint of heart. It is absolutely terrifying in there. And some of the most dangerous space that I've ever lived in Eve, frankly. I love that. I love the way that it is.
It's a very unique kind of space because you have very significant advantages as a resident, because you have access to the NPC. Spoilers. So, you get access to, but you do get access to the structures. So you have NPC structures. They can't refit. They can't rearm. They can't repair. Some of them can't dock. You can always fortify in the home systems. And prior to that, prior to this changes, you had much more freedom of movement. So there was significant advantages given to the home field, or those who chose to go native, without it feeling too gamey, in my opinion. Like, it wasn't like you now have sovereignty, so you get to deploy your own stuff and you get to affect the space. It's more like you have proven yourself to the people there, and therefore you are more welcome there, which is slightly different than other places.
So it's actually something that I liked about the space is that there was a standings grant buy-in. It was a buy-in with the faction that you would join with, right?
Right.
I didn't necessarily like the way that the gates worked, honestly. I don't like the idea of having a brick wall in Eve with no counterplay. That's not fun, because that means people can't come in to fight us. That means that people who want to fight us, like Edencom, don't have a route forward for doing that. They have to use the wormhole, and that's basically it. That's their only option. That's not interesting. It also means that they can't use filaments to come fight us. That's also not interesting. I would have liked to see some changes to the gates in which they were opened, but not in this way. I think that this is rather a poor implementation of opening up the gates for Pochven. Something that I put up on my CSM campaign site, which I'll post in chat real quick. It's Maldavius.space is what that is.
I think that'll work.
What I put together for this was specifically opening up the Pochven gates, but doing it where Triglavian involved players that had done all of this buy-in for this, still had some kind of a home field advantage. Because what they've effectively done here is they said, no more standings on the gates except for the home systems, no more standings on the gates at all. So now everyone is equal. So all these players that spent all of this time buying into Triglavian content, what's their real reward? They have access to stations. Cool. I'm one jump away from high sec. I don't really need access to stations. I can pop through a wormhole and that entire advantage is negated. It's very, very minor in terms of advantage. The second one that you get is, cool, now I'm inside of this space and, the Triglavians won't attack me. But I also can't go to a number of high sec systems that are owned by Edencom. You're losing content now by being Triglavian. That's not good. I
really feel like the real failure, honestly, of Pochven is a lack of creativity with the fortresses. Honestly, it's not Pochven. If they had done more with the fortresses and maybe after the fact fortified all of the 1.0 systems or something like that, and made that idea that, because you were talking about how toxic high sec is for pro Triglavian people, and that's part of the experience that a lot of people don't get. The more fortresses there are, like, if you think like these Triglavians gate camping every once in a while is a problem, like, you can't travel through most of high sec without being ready to be killed by a gate camp of a bunch of Galente with long points and, crazy stuff and gun stars and stuff. So I really feel like it, the Edencom people feel like they didn't get supported very much in their victory and all that stuff. And I really feel like the messaging of Edencom's job within Pochven, their ability to invade and disrupt Pochven wasn't communicated well, or wasn't fleshed out well. And then simultaneously, the fortresses themselves were not a reward for Edencom players and weren't a target for Triglavian players. So you kind of wonder what they're doing with it. But
yeah, I think the thing that I noticed, Remy Main in there in chat, he hit it on the nose. Edencom supporters are the ones that got screwed the most. They have nothing. Nothing changed for them. They have no content. They have no ability to interact with us anymore. We had all of these nice flashpoint moments where we were taking a star, we were, pushing it to liminality, and we would fight against the Edencom players in the system. People would generate memes and videos and music and all this kind of ridiculous stuff. We did the Ology stuff. There was a lot of engagement and like player interaction there, and it's gone now.
Yeah.
There's none. The Edencom forces can't touch us in Pochven. We don't want to leave Pochven to go touch them. What is CCP's plan for this? Because all that cool engagement, all that driving force behind it, it's fading. And you're going to lose the interest of a lot of players that were very heavily engaged in this over time if that continues.
Yeah, well, one would argue that it may have already happened. Like the Edencom players feel slighted, rightfully so at this point. And I don't know how well it can even be repaired with the current group, or whether or not they'd have to try to like build up a new generation of people who are willing to do it. But also, like, I want to highlight specifically like Elizabeth, who's one of the leaders within Electus Matari. She and I have been talking about this a lot because they supported Edencom. They put all their stuff behind this effort and got burned for it. But also for those who have been part of this role-playing stuff for years, going all the way back to 2008 and before, when CCP transitioned from like the normal space opera politics of the early Eve game to the mystery puzzle box of the later like of Templar 1 and Empyrean Age, it kind of dropped a lot of the stuff that the role players at the time were really caring about. And so, like, to some of these guys, this is fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And I think that's something that CCP cannot take for granted, because these are the very people that are amazing cornerstones to our community. These are the very people that we need if we want to have a well, fostered community of people that understand what's going on within the game and care about it. Richard Royce, thank you for joining us down the rabbit hole, Steve Online. Maldavius, what do you got to say?
I think one of the biggest things about this is not only do the Edencom players feel baited in that respect, because they literally fell off the map. That's completely correct. There's nothing for them to do. There's no way for them to interact. There's no, constant struggle between the Triglavians and Edencom. It really just feels like the Triglavians won, and their victory prize is Pochven, which I don't know if a lot of you guys know how this got launched. We were still the largest force in there when it first launched. The first month or two of Pochven, we lost 70% of our player engagement because it was so massively broken.
Mm-hmm.
We were an alliance of about 600 players, and 70% of them weren't signing on for weeks. And the reason why is because the only form of content in Pochven from the PvE side is dread sites. And for the first 2 months, dread sites did not work. They were iterated on a ton of times. We talked to CCP very frequently about this, putting in bugs, putting in tickets, trying to talk to them about fixing this stuff. It was things like, if you did this site, you'd lose Triglavian standing. Literally half a point.
I remember that.
Standing.
Oh my God.
0.5. And we're just like, well, like, you can't do it anymore. It took them like a month and a half to give us the standings back for that. The next one after that was the site just wouldn't complete. It would spawn NPCs forever until your fleet wiped, and there's no way you could get out.
I want to go back to that first one, because you told me this story back then, and I just want to bring it up again, because it
awful.
So it wasn't just like, oh, I lost some standings, who shooky darn. Remember, you need 3.0 to move between systems. So these guys are moving between systems, and suddenly half their fleet can't move anymore.
Yeah, we lost half of our fleet, got stuck in that system, and we had no wormhole into it. And they were just like, well, half the fleet is here now. Hope we can go find the wormhole to get you guys out. Neat.
So this is the kind of stuff they're dealing with on like a daily basis.
So we were dealing with that for the first 2 months. And then on top of it, there were even weirder things. Like if you go to the home systems, right? The home systems have the anchorage in them. The anchorage is a big, super cool thing. It's actually originally was in a dead space pocket, and it was 400 kilometers across. So when you would go to the gate, it would warp you to the gate that's inactive, and you're 400 kilometers away from another gate in a dead space pocket where you can't warp. Like, Pochven released in such a weird state, such a broken state, that I was like, what happened here? where someone didn't do the basic sanity of check of, can I warp to the gate? Can I
Right.
run this one piece of dread content that's the only PvE content in the system? Is very strange. So we weathered through all of that. We survived. Many other alliances, the other groups that were in there, fell away and abandoned Pochven while we stayed waiting for CCP to fix this stuff.
Well,
CCP finally fixed it, rolled out the new dread sites, and we started running that as the only content until more people moved in and we got to actually, fight and do things. It was basically just us for a long while.
Yeah, they iterated on Pochven quite a bit, pretty frequently. Yeah. In fact, pretty much weekly for a while. But ultimately, that ended up being part of the problem because it was so hard to keep track of what was true now that many people just was like, you know what, I'll come back in a little while once things have been figured out, right? Yeah. And that's a big reason why we saw a drop off in engagement. Not even whether or not there was content, but it was just like it was so exhausting to attempt to just stay on top of what things were like today or what our understanding of things were today versus yesterday that a lot of people just kind of opted out.
Yeah, so let's fast forward from that, right? Now we're at today. Now we're at the big change, for Pochven is now you don't need standings for any of the gates. So you've got this very dedicated group of people that were there for the entire invasion. You have that very dedicated group of people moving into Pochven, feeling incredibly slighted because the content is absolutely not workable for about 2 months. 70% engagement drop. They stay. Those people build back up, start making the place work. CCP fixes those major issues with the system to make it a workable region, and they start thriving in it. And then the next change comes in and goes, you know what? All of that hard work that you've put in to gain those standings, to be able to be survivable in this space, to do all these types of things, the advantage that you gain for aligning yourself with the Triglavians, it's gone. Right. Everyone's on the same footing now. And the only reward that you have is less access to high sec. That's a trash implementation. That's not good for the players, and that's disillusioned a lot of them. And I think that's the biggest problem here. This isn't about like what is a fair and advantageous thing in the game. This is about you have to stop carrot and sticking these players, or they're gonna hate it. They're gonna hate the game. Like right. You have to give them some kind of thing, some bonus. And there's even other things too. Like our LP store has items on it that you still cannot obtain. The items to get those, like the clothing in the LP store, they don't drop in game. They're in the data. There's not a single drop source in the entire game for them, which is why there's no market data for any of them. Like absolutely ridiculous things like that. You're just like, why? Like, why is it this way?
Well, I mean, I guess I can assume that it's to make room for them to put it. First of all, those clothing items were the special items that were given out to people based on standings. So I'm not sure if
and they're on the LP store,
right? But I'm not sure if CCP is convinced that they want how easily or how soon they want those to be distributed. But yeah, it is really weird for sure for that to that to be there that way.
It's really weird to have those items on the LP store and not be obtainable. It's also really weird to have like I don't know if you've gone and looked at the LP store like for the prices on things. Like all the implants cost 1 billion each, even though it's like low, medium, and high grade. Like some of that stuff is really it's kind of awkward. Like the LP store is seen as mostly a meme and only really a way to get blueprints now. So it's been strange. Like Pochven is strange. It doesn't really feel like it has a huge amount of benefit to the Triglavian player base right now. And it did before, but I think before it was an unhealthy amount of advantage. There needed to be counterplay to the gates. There needed to be a way to get around these gates so that we could fight. But frankly, I don't think that this is the answer. I don't think that fully opening the region is the answer to that. And it's mostly just led people to be angry. That being said, we're making it work. That's what we're good at. We're good at adapting. We've gotten well over 100 kills since this change this morning, and we're dominating the system. Right now, We're Ashoda, our home, is the 17th most dangerous system in EVE Online. And it's for very good reason. Like we're killing everyone that comes in, and that's fun. It's really fun. So we will always adapt to this. We will always be able to strive to take back control of our area. But it's a strange change by CCP, and it doesn't resonate with the players.
So I think that part of the idea that they had, so like basically the idea was 1.0 was the threshold. 1.0 and 3.0 was the threshold. 1.0 gave you a little bit of flexibility. 3.0 gave you freedom to maneuver basically. And then that 7.0 home situation was to allow groups like you who give a crap enough to get your standings. You can't just be dislodged by some group, doing willy-nilly. It's very difficult. You kind of downplayed it a little bit, but the idea of like reshipping the home field advantage of being able to have your stations within this system and all that stuff versus the people that are invading is an advantage. It's just not as significant of an advantage as being able to use the gates when they can't.
It's not a significant enough advantage for us to use it realistically. Like we can use the NPC stations. We can also use the NPC stations outside of the high six static for the wormhole. Like if we went and staged in another system, say Erica, which feeds into Wirashota, we could do that and it wouldn't matter and no one could stop us from getting in because all the wormholes in Pochven open inward, which means we can control when it opens into Pochven. So that NPC station in there is mostly meaningless comparatively, unless you're using it during a fleet engagement, specifically dock up right now. Like that's not a huge benefit, frankly.
Right. But my point is that they can't reship based on, they have to reship from outside. But my point is,
it's such a small advantage comparatively, though. Like,
you are correct.
Also, you have to remember, many of these systems don't have NPC stations, including 2 of the 3 home systems don't have NPC stations. I believe it's only Kino that does.
That's a good point.
That's a problem. If you want to have buy-in from the Triglavian player base, make a standings requirement and let them dock up in the anchorages and the home systems. Then make that the thing because there's not NPC stations in 2 of those.
So we're going to put those two things. We're going to put those 2 pieces together. So if the home systems were created to be kind of the fortresses that pro-Triglavian people could live in, so that way they could only be dislodged by other pro-Triglavian people. It seems very important to CCP to preserve at least that, to give you guys at least that shield. Right.
It's 100% not, though.
But the problem is that your facilities are outside of those homes because the home systems were chosen more or less randomly compared to where you happen to have your Fortizars anchored when it all happened.
No, we have Fortizars in them.
Oh, okay. Well, okay,
yeah, we have holdings in all 3 of the home systems. So one of the things to be,
but my point is that with 2 of the 3 home systems not having NPC stations, that really undermines that idea of having a trig force that's able to live. Like, why have a home system that has extra standings requirements if you can't live in it?
Yeah, there's one extra problem with this too. It's conflicting design. So if you see the changes, they've removed all of the standings requirements for the gates except for the home system. Still requires 7.0 to get in the home systems, except there's a specific filament that lets you get into the home systems from anywhere with no standings requirement. You land in one of the 3 random home systems without standings. There's wormholes into each of those home systems that backdoors the standings requirements anyway. Where's the benefit? What's the point? It's an arbitrary change. So this looks like conflicting design to me. It's like, oh yeah, we've added 2 back doors to these, so there's no real advantage to being Triglavian. Just use a filament. Just use the wormhole. There's no point to it. So it's not really a benefit there either. Oh yeah, for people who are asking, you cannot anchor new structures in Pochven. The reason that we have these ones is because we took as many of the final liminality systems as we possibly could before Pochven appeared, put citadels down in all of them. And then when it got turned into Pochven, we're like, sweet, we have the only citadels, we win. And that's really what it was. And we used that as our base camp, bought in completely and raised an alliance within Pochven.
So I just had a thought about if a corporation past a certain standings would be able to anchor structures. That actually might be interesting. But
I would love that.
Yeah, I think that would fix everything. But
I honestly think that would be really, really good for the region because what we have right now is kind of a lack of, like, here's the agreement, right? We have a big agreement in Pochven. We fight each other. We fight each other tooth and nail. But if someone comes in to try and destroy citadels, we band together and we stop them. That's what we've done since the whole time because you can't replace them. It's a piece of history. It's a piece of asset that, like, EVE is a long game with a lot of plays. I tell this to my alliance the whole time. If you have a citadel that is permanently erased and you can never replace it, it could never be yours another day. It could never be a token to trade to someone else. It couldn't, you can't have it anymore. It's gone. And that piece of content is removed from the region forever, diminishing it. So we've always protected those types of citadels, always tried to stop that from being destroyed. If they could add citadels back to this region, you have one of 2 problems, right? You have the null blocks coming in and just dropping a million citadels and it becomes, null block 2.0. You have to have some kind of a buy-in if you want to implement a system like that. If someone wanted to make it so that we had to drop new ones, it would have to be a buy-in with the Triglavian forces. It would have to be a standings-related grind. That'd be the only way to do it. And that would, in this case, obviously there's going to be bias. We'd have a significant advantage in that case. But if CCP wanted to do something like that, and they just went, the space is open, and people drop citadels, it'd be the null blocks instantly.
No, yeah,
just a million fortizars in one day.
It would just be another null sec. And that's part of the thing. And you really hit the point, and I want to reinforce it, which is that a lot of people poo-poo the idea of like the no anchoring of structure or citadels, structures, or the no creation of capitals in Pochven or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that what that does is
way.
it makes each individual one its own story, right? Each structure has its own story, and one day there may be no structures in Pochven, and that
there will be
a sad day, and maybe someday CCP will make a design change because of that. But the point is that we are living the journey to that point, and that story matters, and that's what this has all been about from the very beginning. So it doesn't matter whether or not there will be a someday where there's no structures in Pochven. It's how we get there that we're figuring out.
So Remy Main, you were asking about Pocos. Can new Pocos be dropped? Yes, they can. You have to have standings. So right now, the system is already in place for dropping new citadels effectively if you have standings. It's corporation-wide standings. Because of that, we formed a number of different subcorps within, Strybog Clade. We've got Strybog Proving for people who don't have the standings required for these game mechanics yet. And then we have Strybog SKS3 to have people that have the standings, and that's the one that controls all that kind of stuff. And you need that in order to have an office in the station, so we can actually put our capital like in Pochven, which is pretty cool. And you need that in order to drop Pocos. I think it's 1.5 corp wide in order to drop Pocos. So we've dropped all the Pocos in our space. Like we own all the Pocos there, and that's it's pretty lucrative. It's nullsec space. It's got great planets. That's the kind of stuff that's really, really cool. But that is the only example currently of like a corp level buy-in for this type of content. Is like you get a station, like you can rent an office in the station and you can drop Pocos. Those are cool. I like that. I actually think that's a great thing that promotes players making a Triglavian aligned corporation and in encouraging their members to align with like Triglavians. There's nothing else outside of that, frankly. And the individual line member benefits, which is I came in here and I aligned myself with the Triglavians so I could get 3.0, so I could do the Dread site, so I can go and do the rest of content in Pochven. That's gone. They have no reason to do it anymore. And that is, I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good for Triglavian movement. I don't think that's good for like Triglavian Edencom fighting. I don't think any of that is good. I think it needs to be implemented in a different way.
Yeah. Unless the third gate of the Anchorage opens up and that lets in something else that gives us a reason to have that 7.0. That could be.
I mean, the only thing they'd have to make it so it was standings related if it was to be something that you want to grind for. It has to be lucrative. It has to be interesting. It has to be something you want to be a part of. If it's just like, oh, you just have to be in the home system and the gates take 7.0, just use a filament, bypass the whole system. They have to implement something else if they want to make that, interesting for the Triglavian user base.
Right.
And like, I'm worried that CCP is just walking back their design idea of like, oh, maybe standings are bad. And it's probably because there wasn't enough engagement in Pochven. There was a very small amount of players that were out here, frankly. It was mostly the most diehard players that were here. The issue that I'm having with this is that the implementation of just removing the standings completely is leaving those guys disillusioned. They feel badly about the time that they've invested in the game, and that's never something you want to do as a developer. Like I've been working in the game industry now for about 16 years. So I'm a game developer. I've worked for major studios. I own my own studio now. And something that I never, ever want to happen, ever, for anything that I make is disillusioning the players that are the most bought in. You don't ever want to do that. And that's what it feels like here. It's very strange.
And that goes into what we were saying earlier with the Edencom guys. Like this is kind of been their MO, is to like take their most loyal player base and then kind of, leave them
smash
high and dry.
And
so
I don't think it's intentional either. I think it may just be a lack of understanding of what drives that player base, frankly. Like,
sure. Well, their eye is on a different ball,
Yeah.
So the thing is, Pochven has two things that I think has really like two potentials to it. One is that idea of like going native and choosing to become part of this other group, these NPCs with their own allegiances. But on the other side is the idea of flipping the invasion script, right? For 2+ years, it had been Triglavians invading Edencom and known space. And so Edencom had been on the defensive, Triglavians have been on the offensive. We're the ones taking the system and disrupting their stuff and all that stuff. And it really seemed like Pochven was the opportunity to switch that around. And so now Edencom is the invaders.
Yeah.
So what I would have expected was a way for like the Edencom guys to slowly break down the gates, like start in a border system and then shut off the defenses so that way they could get into the internal systems and then shut off those gates or those defenses to be able to get into the internal systems, over the course of some time with objectives that you as pro-Triglavian people would want to prevent as they try to, break in deeper and deeper into your home. I wanted some gameplay involved in the breaking in deeper into Pochven, with the idea that we are actually doing things in Pochven to disrupt Triglavian efforts and to advance Edencom efforts. But thus so far, a lot of that stuff has just been relegated to like world news and side stuff and stuff. And I
think it'd be really interesting to start that somewhere. And a really good spot is, because I've been watching all the news and different lore stuff related to this, would be Skarkon. Skarkon's the only Minmatar one that we have, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure that's the only Minmatar system that got brought into Pochven. That's a great place to start. The Minmatar aren't going to want to lose one of their systems. It's a huge deal. Massive deal.
It's a great system to start in. And actually, I tipped off the correct people at the correct time to get us to go after Skarkon with enough effort to go after it, because Alexis Maritari and a lot of the other people during Invasion were putting a lot, and I mean a lot, of effort into making sure that no Minmatar system, they didn't go liminal, but they also didn't fortify. Like, they stopped everyone from advancing in a lot of those systems. And so, yeah, we managed to snag Skarkon from them, which is hilarious because it is actually a very pivotal system to the Minmatar lore in general. During Empyrean Age, the Angel Cartel basically took over Skarkon for a period of time. And that there is brewing of that happening again, where there's been conflict between who controls Skarkon, the Minmatar or the Angels. And there's a lot of going back and forth, and oops, it's now in Pochven. So, that is actually, that was the other piece of what I was, about what makes Pochven special, my bad, which is that the idea of the individual story, right? Each citadel has its own individual story. Each capital has its own individual story. But each system in Pochven has its own individual story too. Pochven is its own thing, but Vale isn't Skarkon, right? Vale is under Gallente leadership, and it's really close to the Gallente capital. And so the Gallente are freaking out about Vale. And there's a lot of stuff involving Cat, which is the system right next to Vale. Meanwhile, Skarkon is fighting between the Angel Cartel operating in there and whatnot. So they could really develop
with you on one point of that. You said it was under Gallente rule. I'm sorry, but that's part of Pochven. That's ours now. Just,
Was. Well, but that's the thing. And that's the thing that, like, I find really exciting about the world news, but that I'm really disappointed isn't really being reflected well in game, which is that each one of these systems is being treated differently, both by the Triglavians that are in it and by their resident governments. So while, there's been rebellion and lockdowns within like state-controlled places that turned into Pochven, the Vale dudes literally just like immediately was like, I guess we could just get along with them now. And like, they've been working with them, with the Triglavians ever since. They see it as like a new government, basically.
It's one of the strangest things, though, is like none of this is expressed through game mechanics.
Exactly.
Like, I love that there's a huge amount of lore in this, but there is nothing that is expressed through game mechanics, and there's a huge amount of players that want those game mechanics. They want to do something with this content. They want to explore this content. They don't want to have one PvE site of content through all of Pochven, which is the Dread sites. They want to have hacking sites. They want to have relic sites. They want to learn more about the Triglavians. They want to learn more about Edencom. They want an expansion on the types of ships that they have here. They want an expansion on the conflict between Edencom and Triglavians. They want more of this. And to be honest with you, CCP should be building that content because of how successful this actually was. That is a massively good business move, considering the engagement that they had. The idea behind the invasion was actually development gold. And the reason why is because you had situations where someone was a high-sec miner for 10 years. They found out about the Triglavian stuff because it invaded their system. It's high-sec. They're not going to get ganked during this. They join up one of these fleets. They start killing Edencom, or they start killing Triglavian. The system gets pushed by Triglavians into, first liminality, goes into low-sec. Now you got a guy who's been a high-sec miner for 10 years in a low-sec situation where he's fighting in his home to try and stop us. Then it goes to null-sec and final liminality. He's now fighting in null-sec as a 10-year high-sec miner. We saw this over and over again during the invasion, and it brought people from all different types of gameplay in EVE together to learn about other styles of gameplay and get them more invested in the game. That is brilliant. That is exactly what this game needs, because you have people that are stuck in a rut doing the same activity forever in Eve that are now trying something new and learning from people from way different areas of space. You got a guy that's like, oh, I only run, missions in HiSec, but now I'm running under a null block FC inside of this crazy thing in nullsec where I used to run missions at. That's rad. That's really, really good for the game. We don't have any of that now. In fact, we have no inlet into Triglavian content now either. One of the things that I have on my CSM campaign page is we have no way to tell the new player about Triglavians and Edencom. They just go through a system and they're like, oh, I guess this is invaded with something. I don't understand what that means. There's nothing for them. So one of the things I put up is give it an epic arc. Teach players about what Triglavians and Edencom are. Let them choose a side at the end of that epic arc. Give them a large amount of time to learn about each faction and then choose through that epic arc. Bring more players in, show them what this content is. Otherwise, it's just going to go stale and be nothing off in the armpit of space here.
At the very least, if you're going to update the tutorial over and over and over again, maybe Aura should mention the Triglavians as well as the sleepers during those early operations. Like it does feel like the Triglavian invasion sits atop and different from everything else happening in the game. And while that made sense during invasions, while it was still coming together, like at this point, it makes sense for new missions to be brought in. Everyone's starting to adjust to what has happened. And I think that there's a wonderful opportunity to make each system unique and interesting in ways. And actually, it would give it a good reason to make it so that we can open up the gates. Like if Veil's going to have things about it that Scarcon doesn't, then maybe you want people to be able to navigate to which system within the conduit network that they want to be part of. But
I don't know if that adds a benefit to the region, though. Frankly, like a lot of what we do in terms of game mechanics is you have to play around the weather effect in Pochven. If you make each system unique in a way of like maybe engagements and things like that, that gets really messy really quick. And it's also like really hard to balance. So I don't know what you would do in terms of uniqueness other than changing engagement rules in those systems. If it's just graphical related and things like that, it's not going to impact a wide amount of players. It'll impact ones that are very driven by lore, which is cool. That is quite a lot of people, but it's not all types of players, and it's not the grand majority of players. So I'd like to see more changes that are related to game mechanic stuff that are going to impact the most amount of players and get them engaged in this type of content, even if they're not a very niche group that just wants the lore. I love the lore, I really do, but I know that a grand majority of players couldn't care less about it. They want to, have PvP. They want to do this kind of other stuff. Also, someone was talking about it can just be missions. I don't agree that it could just be missions. And the reason why is choosing between Triglavian and Edencom is actually a very massive deal because it locks out sections of HiSec all over New Eden. If you choose Triglavian, you can't go to Edencom systems. They will kill you. Like, that's just how that is. If you choose Edencom, you can't go to Triglavian systems. They will kill you. I want the player to have enough knowledge and understanding of that before they make that decision. And if they just pick up a mission, they're like, I have to do this mission. I gain Triglavian standing. I don't know what that means. Whatever, I'll run it. And then they're locked out of half of HiSec. That's a pretty rough thing. That's
I wouldn't,
really rough.
I don't think I would put it in, like, I wouldn't put the standings in with missions, but what I think we were saying was exposing them to the idea of Triglavians, and that there should be new missions put in that that involve the Triglavians to let people know that there's something, way to go deeper, because they could actually open up their agency window and go into exploration and look into like Triglavian space and stuff like that. But until they get killed by some Raznaborg, there's nothing in the game even telling them that Triglavians are a thing, basically, yep. Besides a pirate faction. So having...
The invasions were great for that, though. Like, that taught them about it because it was everywhere. It was everywhere.
That's
and
true.
It impacted so many different people. There's nothing like that in the game right now. There's nothing to lead them into this content. We find people because we make the news on our Eve a lot. People talk about, oh my God, Pochven's doing a thing. And then other players go, what is that? And then they come talk to us and they join into the alliance. That's cool. Like, that's great. But I think there needs to be game mechanic related stuff to teach players what these things are. Because otherwise you're just not going to have it. There's, for every one of the other factions in the game, there's some kind of a game mechanic or a mission or things like that that teaches you about them, teaches you about pirates, teaches you about SOE. That's cool. There's not anything like that for Triglavian and Edencom right now. I think it's an oversight. I think it's something that should come. I wouldn't be surprised if CCP did do that, but I'm going to push for it. I want that to happen.
I Yeah, I think that you pretty much nailed it. There's a lot of potential here, but the little ways that they're not realizing it is making it more frustrating than it's not like I can work with this. Like, it's almost like you can see what it should be, and the fact that it isn't is almost annoying. The other piece that I'd like to, as we talk about like the lore aspects of things, one of the things that frustrates me is we see this increasing like discussion about the various clades within Triglav fighting each other within Pochven, disrupting their own efforts. You know, Svarog attacking Velis holdings, etc., etc. And while that kind of does happen in the game in a buggy kind of way, as in the Trig rats attacking each other, that isn't, I think, what they mean. And I think that it would be way more interesting if you pro-Trig people were given an opportunity to assist one clade over the other, given the fact that Pochven is divided into the 3 clades as cries.
We wanted inter-clade fights. That's what we tried to set up in the very beginning, but then people fell out. They were like, Pochven is broken. We don't want to be here. We wanted to have one major group on each one of the clades and then just fight as inter-clades. We wanted to, role play that out, but also have it with game mechanics and make it, really fun and cool. So that fell through. We couldn't do that anymore. There's no actual interaction with the NPCs whatsoever. It's one of the things that I put up on my website, which I'll post it here again. Pochven related changes there. This is a really serious one. Triglavians are background noise in Pochven. Anybody who hasn't been there, we rarely see the Triglavians at all. They don't exist, frankly. And the NPCs that you get are drifters, drones, and Edencom, and then Triglavians. All 4 of those factions have bugs in Pochven where they will randomly start attacking anything on grid, including their own people, including players if they're blue to them. So this has been a long-standing issue. The Triglavians killing themselves, the Edencom killing themselves. It's constant. The drifters even shoot themselves. It's ridiculous.
And so, to be clear,
we've seen that over and over again.
To be clear, I know that players claim this is a bug, that's a bug quite a bit, but it has been proven time and time again. If this happens, you can petition it as a false loss, and it will be reimbursed by CCP.
I have personally had 3 ships replaced during the invasion. 2 of them were for Edencom shooting, or not Edencom, Triglavians shooting me when I'm Triglavian aligned. I had like 4.0 at one time and 7.0 at the other one. They still killed me for no reason. And the last one was a drifter shot me while I was in a warp bubble, and then it teleported me back on grid in my pod. And I was like, oh, well then. It was pretty good. So drifters also have like the most amount of bugs in there. They can target you when you're cloaked. You'll actually get yellow boxed while cloaked. Neat. And they'll shoot you from 200 kilometers away in a warp bubble, which we've learned now. Very terrifying. Actually horrifying.
Anytime that we deal with the drifters, I get really suspicious about anything that's referred to as a bug, just because their capabilities are so much more than our understanding of things. But yeah, that's spooky stuff for sure.
No, it's broken, is what it is. It's clearly broken. We've seen the same kind of stuff, throughout the invasion. Remember the entropic disintegrator werepost? They just delete a freighter in like 0.5 seconds. It's that kind of stuff. We've seen the same kind of like weird balancing issues with these units.
Oh, I'm not saying that the drifters have always been full of bugs, but my point is that any given bug when it comes to the drifters has always been very difficult to kind of sort into things, because they're also just spoopy and have their own capabilities and stuff. Like
some of them just have they need a pass though. Like for instance, there's one of the drifter ships can scram you, but its scram only has a 10-kilometer range and it orbits you at 30 kilometers. So it never scrams you. It has it just can't use it.
Let me be clear. I'm not saying that I'm not trying to defend it. What I'm saying is that this is what makes it difficult for us to process what we are seeing, because it is difficult to sort between a bug and what's supposed to be like their advanced technology giving them advanced capabilities. And this has always been true about the drifters.
I don't think that orbiting beyond your maximum scram range is advanced technology.
That's just dumb. That's correct. Although it's interesting, you see that actually a lot with even like Edencom rats will do that too. Well, they'll have an orbit range that's outside of their scram range.
Yeah. Frankly, I just think they need a pass. I think that CCB needs to sit down, do a pass on these NPCs, see exactly what they're using, see what the ranges on their abilities are. Look at them, find out what's going on, and please God, fix the AI issue. It's insane to have every once in a while we get a line member that's like, I died to Trigs, put in a ticket, CCB gave me my shit back. Like that. When you lead a 900-man alliance inside of Pochven, this is a real common thing that we have to deal with. It's pretty rough.
So we are running low on time. But I do want to make sure to bring up one of the things that kind of triggered asking you to come on today's show,
Sure.
anyways, which was that last week we had a guy that was talking about taxing you guys coming into the dread sites, tagging it, taking the payouts, and specifically the accusation was that there was an exploit involved in this, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to present your side of this whole equation.
Yeah, so I'll talk about this in great detail. There's an exploit in Pochven where if you go into a dread site and you tag something and then you cloak up, you can move 5,000 kilometers off grid. You can even warp out of the site and warp back in. All you have to do is decloak at the time that the site completes, and you get a portion of the fleet's payout, even if you're not in fleet. So what they're doing is they're taking 5 to 10 characters, they're putting them all in there, they're worming the site, as we call it, flying way off grid 5,000 kilometers, decloaking at the exact second that the site ends, and then recloaking again and stealing a ton of money from people. There's no counterplay to this. There's no way to stop them from doing this. They set up 4 to 5 hours in advance in some cases, and they're 5,000 kilometers away, cloaked in a random location. That is not good for the game. That's toxic. There's nothing about that I can consider as valid gameplay, frankly.
So to be clear, you're not having a problem with like them bringing in interceptors at the last second, shooting the thing and then burning off and then whatever. You're talking about either being set up previously in a way that probably shouldn't be possible, or the other one I've heard is bouncing off and coming back and sitting on the outside, which still counts as inside.
So yeah, what you can do is you can actually get in, tag something, warp away from the site, like literally warp out. Then when the fleet comes in and goes into room 2, you warp back into the site and you just sit there cloaked, and then you uncloak, and your tag still counts. Even though you left the site and came back, the tag still counts and they get money for it. This is clearly exploitive behavior. So when I say it's an exploit, I mean this is an exploit. CCP hasn't marked it as an exploit, but they really should. There's nothing about this that is valid gameplay. It's not promoting PvP. It's just promoting parasitism, and it's not good. It's not good for the game. It's toxic.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important because a lot of people, like, it was presented as you were trying to claim that coming in and stealing payouts was the exploit, which is not true. That is emergent gameplay. If somebody wants to come in and mess with you directly, then they should be able to.
Yes, that's great. They should be able to enter the site and fight us for the site and bother us like that. The problem we have is exactly what I just described. It's not a PvP fight when the dude's 5,000 kilometers away and decloaks. Like, that's trash. That's actually trash. And CCP really needs to take a look at this. I was talking about this earlier today too. There's another exploit that's going on right now that we just found out about today, which is fantastic. You can stop the dread sites from spawning at all. And this one is really bad. So I'm not going to reveal how this is being done. I know how it's being done, but what's required like here is a person has to be doing it specifically, and they have to abuse the game mechanics to make it so that that site never spawns, and they have to stay there the whole time that it's not spawning. So someone is actively sitting there forcing that site to not spawn, and it's locked the content out completely for the next 24 hours. And that's not just dread sites. We saw that during the invasion. We've seen that at other times in EVE. It's blocking that site from spawning. And because there's only 3 of those in Pochven at a given time, yesterday, 2 of them were gone. There was only 1 dread site for all of Pochven for the entire 24 hours. That's horrible. And those people that are doing that need to be banned. CCP needs to get on top of this.
That is clearly passing the threshold of, fighting over the systems, fighting over, with the rules versus the definition of exploiting a bug in the rules in order to have an effect that isn't valid. I could argue that, like, they could add in cloaky camping defenses like they're going to soon. But even that, it's like, even a workaround to this.
Issue. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you could hunt them down and therefore stop their camping. But
do you know what the easy fix is? Make it like incursions. Only the fleet that does the most damage gets the payout. Done. Literally the same mechanic that already exists in incursions. They could fix all of this by just doing that. It's very, very simple.
Sure, but that would also shut out people from just coming in and poaching the payouts just validly. I would prefer to see a system in which I think it would be as simple as just announcing that these 2 behaviors are exploits, and then continuing to do so would be punishable.
Bannable. Yeah, that'd be fine. If they did that, I would be all for it. And to be honest with you, it's not that I'm just sitting here screaming into the void. We've done our due diligence. We've put in over 100 bug reports and over 50 support tickets for this. We've put in about 50 bug reports now for the new one. So like we're doing everything that we can to bring this to CCP. We've also talked to members of the CSM, such as Brisk, telling him everything that is going on with this so he can bring it up to them as well. Because this is incredibly toxic for the region. It's not beneficial at all.
Yeah, that's not great.
Yeah.
And yeah, man.
I want to like I'm down to fight over the sites. Come bring me a fight, but this is not that. This is exploits, man.
Yeah, this just comes across as bitter people being bitter, right? Like I'm gonna if I can't win, I'm just gonna break everything, which isn't particularly cool. But so what I found interesting about this was that actually doing the valid mechanism of coming and seagulling or taxing, depending on which side of the equation you're on, that has just been made way easier than before. Do you think that will cause people to stop disrupting the spawning and go back to stealing payouts? Or
we already saw the disruption happening today already, even with the changes. So I doubt that. The one that we're seeing now the most is the site just doesn't spawn, get owned, and thankfully, because that person has to stay on grid in order for that to happen, a GM can just show up and ban them. That's what we need. We need a GM to just show up and be like, no. And I can't see any way out of it other than that, because there's no counter to that to stop the site from spawning. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
several sites are locked down to the exploit right now. I think it's 2 right now. There's only one. I think there's only one active dread site in Pochven right now because of it. There's only 3 at a time ever. So
yeah, so the way it works is that there are 3 dread sites, and when one of them is finished, it will respawn somewhere else within the constellation, which is Pochven.
Yep. One of 27 systems. It can even respawn in the same system, which is the luck. The luck is fantastic when that happens.
Which is incidentally how most sites like this operate, but Pochven just happens to be contiguous and interconnected in a way that a lot of other systems aren't, and so you don't think about sites that way. But generally speaking, that's how CCP manages these sorts of things. When a site gets ran, it gets thrown back into the hopper and then gets redistributed either within the same constellation or within the same region. So they're using that same mechanic just to make sure that there's 3 dreads active at any given time. But what that has meant historically is that those who can move within Pochven can move between dread sites, and those who are disrupting them couldn't unless they already had the standings themselves. This removes that. So now Edencom can actively get involved in fighting your stuff, which makes this far, far more exciting, which makes me even more frustrated if an exploit is preventing this from happening.
Yep.
So that can't be allowed.
I'll give you an example of the payouts for this. On average, we do 15-man fleets for this because that gives the most optimal amount of payout for it. Without anyone doing the seagulling exploit, you get about 234 million ISK per player. That's an immense amount of ISK. I'll talk about that in a minute because I don't like that either. When someone is doing this exploit, you get 20 to 50 million per player. That's the impact of it. 75% of the payment or more is gone because of this. And there's no counterplay to that. I don't like that dread sites pay out so much. I really don't. I think there needs to be another variety of content in Pochven. We need to have relic sites. We need to have data sites. We need to have smaller PvE sites that actually pay out normally, because we have the small PvE sites. They pay out 6 million. You need over 1 billion ISK on grid to get 6 million ISK. Terrible. So no one runs them. No one does that content. The dread sites themselves pay out so much that they're the only thing that matters in the entire region. They need to drain money out of that and put it into other things and add another variety of content for this region to really shine. And it's not right now. So I think that's another problem too.
Right. I want to clarify something. It was pointed out in chat that cloaky camping is not an exploit. You're absolutely correct. This is not cloaky camping. This is not
cloaky camping.
This is not interfering with the local, because there is no local. It's basically a wormhole system. This is explicitly having pre-tagged, pre-set up the situation in order to get credit for a site that explicitly tries to not give you rewarded for being cloaky. So
cloaky camping is a completely separate thing, frankly. This has nothing to do with that. Yeah, this is people stealing ticks from PvE fleets using cloak mechanics and not actually doing anything in the site. It's bad. It's something it's really toxic, really bad. There's no counterplay to it. It's really annoying. And if it was just cloaky camping, like whatever. We're in wormhole space. I can't see you in local anyway. I don't care.
And
Enjoy.
even if it is what they originally stated it was, which is like using interceptors to go peg and then come in and peg it and then fly off, there's still a chance that the rats will go after them. You could have your own interceptors go chase after them. There's a lot of play and counterplay there if they have to come in and disrupt your fight actively. But if they can pre-position and be cloaked, then they basically get to undermine all of that in a way that the rules weren't really designed for. But either way, the important thing here to note is that disruption of the sites are okay. But there are potential things that could be exploitive in how it is done, and that is that's where the issues are, and what CCP needs to be able to rule on.
And the site breaking exploit needs to be stopped immediately. We know how to do it. People are starting to figure it out, like more and more of our line members, and we've told them you are not allowed to do this. If you're caught doing that inside of our alliance, you're gone, hands down. Like we don't allow this kind of stuff.
I wanted to give you an opportunity to address one more thing, also, which is that. It was thrown around in the last economic report. It was shown that, like, notably, Pochven was not reported as an actual region.
Yeah,
right?
They did like Triglavian invasion, whatever.
And right? I suspect that the reason why the regional exports and imports were not added, and I think that this is true, I got semi-confirmed, that because Pochven is effectively a wormhole space, and wormhole space is not reported for things like production, mining, etc. So that's why Pochven is not reported in those industrial indexes. But payouts, ISK, sinks, and faucets are reported, and there was a special corporation payout that was specified that it was Triglavian invasions. So this would be both pro-Edencom and pro-Triglavians completing sites, not rats just roaming around, but actual named sites. When you finish the site, so you'll get a payout. Triglavians get paid out more in ISK than Edencom, and Pochven pays out more in ISK than K-Space. But the big highlight was that 3.1 trillion ISK was earned or paid out by invasion content in 1 month, in I think February, right? So I talked to various other people about it. The entirety of pro-Edencom efforts and like dread sites and whatnot may come up to maybe $500 billion, which means you guys are making a lot.
No. So I actually built an economic report. I made that public. If you'd like a copy, I can send it to you, showing exactly where all of our ISK comes from and how much we're making. We made about 550 billion ISK in total for our line members.
Okay.
And I can extrapolate that from our 5% tax rate. So I know exactly what our members are making based on our 5% tax and just multiply it by 20. If you look at the actual region, we're the dominant force in the region. We run the majority of dread sites out there. We know that Rot Capel at the time and the Como Russians were running them as well. They didn't run them to the capacity that we did, not by a mile. So because of this, we know that there's something either strange about that number or there's other factors in it. It's also not counting in the fact that it's not just us making that money, because people come to me all the time. They're like, you made 3.1 trillion? Dude, I would lose my mind if I made 3.1 trillion ISK in a month. Like, are you insane? That's so much money. Like, our corporation made enough to fuel itself. Like, we're good at that. We're good at that kind of thing. Our members make a lot of money, and we have enough to keep the house running, keep the house warm, and make sure that we're safe. That's it. But there's also World Arc sites that are being constantly run. And, there was a guy who was running 15 golems at it. All his golems are dead now. Quite funny.
Twice.
Yeah, twice. He used to rent from us, and then he was like, I don't want to rent from you anymore. And then he was dead twice within the next 7 days. Very funny. It's like, well, rip, dude. So that gets run constantly. Then you've got the high sec guys that are running those sites constantly. Then you've got other groups that are running the dread sites internally constantly. So, like, I'm wondering, does this all add up to 3.1 trillion? Because I can't see it from my vantage point. I'd like to see, to be honest with you, it'd be pretty cool to see all the groups that are actually running this stuff come together and see what their math shows and where all this is actually going. Because what my anticipation is, it's Pochven plus the high sec stuff.
Oh, it absolutely
all together is one giant thing.
Yeah,
and I don't know where all that money is coming from, but we don't have all of it, not by a mile.
Yeah,
I'd love it. Give it to me, please. I would love all that money, but yeah, we don't have that.
So there are dread sites that do spawn in K-Space. The pro Edencom dread, i.e., like the pro Edencom forces can run their dread in high sec and systems that are connected to Pochven at that time via wormhole.
Did you know their sites drop a blueprint for Zernatris, by the way?
That I do. I know that they changed stuff for you guys too. So that
we don't
way
get Zernatra blueprint drops. We have to buy them.
You get a token that lets you pick which Zernatra blueprint drop you get, right? Basically,
no, we don't get that at all. Not the slightest.
I thought you
if
get.
You want to build no, we get logs. Those logs are then turned in. You need 475,000 logs in order to get all of the blueprints for a Zernatra. We don't get a token that lets you choose or anything like that.
I thought it was a doodad that was part of it.
From the. No, we have to buy everything from the LP store. 475,000 logs, by the way, is 10 dread sites worth of logs. If we don't give them to our line members, which we do.
Is it 100% logs? Because most of those things require some other secondary.
It's logs. Okay, here's the awful economy of the dread site. They drop these other things called like holograms. You need 10 holograms, a huge amount of logs, and then a bunch of like raw ISK in order to turn in for the Zernatra blueprint. I think it's 1 billion.
It was that third thing that I was referring to.
There's 10 holograms. Yeah, we have like 15,000 of those.
Got it.
Yet, like they drop like candy. They're worthless. We don't want them. We've tried selling them the high second. No one will buy them. They're actual trash. So,
Well, they're technically only valuable to you because.
Well, they're not even valuable to us because imagine how many of those.
But you're the only person, like you are the closest thing to be having somebody who has something valuable to them.
But think about it this way. You need 10 to get a Zernatra blueprint, plus all of the logs, plus all of the ISK. We don't need that many of these holograms. Give us something else to do with them. It's really strange.
That's very interesting. Okay, cool. That helps flesh out my understanding about things.
Like,
but
our LP store is a mess, frankly. We have some serious problems with the LP store. A lot of the items in there that just don't make sense in terms of pricing, including the implants. They're all 1 billion ISK each. If you want to get a Zernatra, you need about 475,000 to 500,000 logs in order to do that. On top of I think it's 6 billion ISK in buy-in of actual just raw ISK to buy them all. On top of those 10 holograms. If you want to get any of the clothing, guess what? You can't because the tokens to get the clothing don't drop in the game. They're in the data. They don't drop from any source in the entire game, so you can't even get them. Like. The LP store is a massive mess. It needs to be overhauled. And frankly, you know what I'd love to see on the LP store is a mind link for the Draugr, because there isn't one in the game. There isn't a single mind link that matches what the Draugr's bonuses are. There's not a Triglavian mind link for it. Put it in the LP store. Give us something like that. Come on.
I mean, I would give so much for a Triglavian command ship based on T2 Drekovic. Like, oh my God. Either way,
I mean,
sorry,
we've got it with the Draugr. Like, have you seen what the Draugr's bonuses are?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I want the Draugr makes me. Ever since the Draugr came out, my one like Christmas wish is for the actual command ship equivalent, the Tech 2 Drekovic command ship with intel and skirmish boosts. That's all I want for Christmas, and that's all I wanted for Christmas for about 3 years now.
Because like the Draugr gives, for those who don't know, the Draugr gives skirmish and information command links. There's not a single mind link in the game that gives both of those. There's one for everything else. Like, it doesn't exist. Put that in the game. Put it in our LP store. Give us something to buy and use. Like, that's an easy ask. That's an easy one, and it fits with this Triglavian ship, which means it should be in the Triglavian LP store. Hey, like. We need more things to do with this LP store that makes sense in this space and work as a way for players to make value out of, the LP tokens that they get. Because you don't get general LP points. You get these tokens called logs, and you have to transport them and move them, and you could lose them if you blow up. So, like, they need something to do with these that isn't just like, I'm going to buy some blueprints. They need cooler things. They need other stuff to add.
Yeah. So to start to wrap this up a little bit, I just want to...
Kill Rockstar. It's not about give us even more money. I don't want the Dreads to pay out as much as they do. I think it's a mistake that they pay out as much as they do, frankly.
It's actually really
other variety of content here.
That to jump in on that, even with EdenCom as well, one of the things that I've noticed is that it seems that CCP has rewarded the teams by saying like, okay, and now you have all of these new ISK sources that don't require fighting over it anymore. Congratulations, you get to do your things. Like the pro EdenCom people can make a boat ton of money very safely right now if they want to,
because they get to run it in high sec,
right? And so I think that there's this idea that's like, well, this is their reward, right? They get to now they can run their dread sites without anybody really disrupting them that much, or anything like that. But what I've heard from now both sides is that it's not about the ISK. And this is one of the things that's super, super critical about invasions and about Pochven and about all of this stuff and about faction warfare and all these things is that Like for years, we have thought about Eve activities as like, what is its ISK per hour? What is its, and its value to the players is based on how much it was worth, what resources could be exploited for money. And that was the sole measure of whether or not something in PvE was deemed as valuable. And what has happened is we now have a growing amount of the community that have gone back to that original idea of just loving the game itself and wanting to be part of these factions, wanting to engage with this stuff, and ultimately being disappointed with the promise that isn't followed through with in the mechanics that are being rolled out. And so these aren't complaints about like how suicide ganking is too easy or how cloaking camping is disrupting things. These are people that care extremely passionately and are trying to engage with the game in a deeper level than a lot of other players. Being
it's just empty,
seeing how close we are to doing something so cool and how much CCP could do with this stuff and saying, please give us direction, give us guidance. And I personally hope that Foundations shows us that CCP is making a major pivot towards engaging with those players and towards learning the lessons from those from the past. But part of that involves, you know, continuing to work with Pochven and continuing to make it interesting. Please, Maldavius, at the very least, let me know if any of that new rogue drone stuff, the Supers Rex or the new pods start showing up anywhere or any new sites.
What I'm hoping those are, I'm actually, because I've been watching Hobo Leaks too, you know, like we're looking up everything. I'm really hoping that it turns out to be relic and data sites. Like give me something else to do in here. And frankly, people are talking about like, oh, you make so much money, you do all this. Take the Dread ISK away, put it into other activities, spread it around and give us a variety of content. Doing one thing every day, all day is super, super boring for people. They want to learn more about this faction. They want to be able to engage with the Triglavians more. They want more of this backstory while being able to do the game. And you don't get that by just running a Dread site 4 times a day. Get rid of it. Like reduce the ISK, put it into other stuff, give us some more stuff to do. And that's really what it comes down to. It's a single, I guess
this
your
is their
stream is
what?
Crashing? I think your internet's crashing.
Oh, that's possible. Hold on.
Whoa, you sound like a robot. Am I crashing?
No, it's a looks like
me?
No, it's my connection. It says it's live again, but I've got 0 kilobytes up. Oh, looks like I'm coming back. I might be back. Okay.
Are we good?
I think we're back, but I'm also kind of wrapping things up. So, yeah, I think that the point is that there's a lot of potential here, and the players are trying to work with CCP to make things fair. And I hope that if nothing else, we see a continuation of CCP like recognizing our desire to engage with the universe. For a long time, the player base has given the CCP the feedback that we weren't interested in the lore. In the last few years, that has changed. CCP's attitude has changed about it. And I hope that, you know, Foundations is only the start of that, you know, kind of reinforcement. But Pochven is certainly going to need to be part of that. And simply removing the standings to the gates that is not the miracle cure that we were asking for, or needing right now, I don't think.
No, it's really not. And basically what we're doing now is it's reduced our content to be, you know, we're gate camping right now and we're pushing back out. We're taking, you know, back the rest of the triangle. We will push out. We will survive. We will beat down everybody else who tries to come in here. And that's, you know, that's what we're doing now. Is our content right now is just as much PvP as we can possibly eat. And I love it. You know, it's fun. But I don't think that this is the right thing for the Triglavian player base because many of them feel disillusioned because of the amount of time that they've spent grinding those standings. That's not where I want this to be. I'm glad that there's more content in Pochven. I'm glad that there's more fights in Pochven. The PvP is awesome, but players feeling bad about their time investment is not what this should have done, and that's not good.
I agree, and I've kind of avoided using my own example in this up until this point, just because I don't know whatever. But it is true. Like I got my standings up to 3.0 so that way I could navigate Pochven. Thankfully, your crew made that not as valuable as it could have been. But
well, I mean, you did stream coming in here.
It is what it is. Hey man, all's fair, man. But the key is that that's not just effort, because now they've introduced a way to be able to get positive standings with both. And so there's a lot of people who have gotten positive standings with both and therefore not have to worry about it whatsoever. And so had I have not been so ambitious and I had just stayed at 1.0, then I wouldn't have nearly as far to grind back up, because now I'm -3 with Edencom, which is going to take me even more effort to be able to grind all the way up. And so somebody right now could just kill one rat and be like, and I'm done. And I could have done that too. But, you know, and so the thing is that like the problem is it's no longer even about whether or not someone's rewarded for their standings. It's whether or not you have retroactively started punishing them or having some sort of consequence that was unforeseen about their standings. And on the one hand, like I love the emergent universe and the stories unfolding and all that kind of stuff, but like literally being like, it was a mistake to have ground that standings before is probably not a great thing.
Like if you grind standings for Triglavians right now, what you're doing is you're buying yourself limited access in HiSec. That's not good. That's really bad. Your benefit right now is I don't get to go to a number of HiSec systems because they're Edencom controlled. I don't think that's positive, and I don't think that's a fair reward. That's not good.
Okay.
Can you make a station in Pochven your home station and respawn there when killed? No, you cannot. So if you set it as your home station, or you try to set it as your home station, the option is not there. You can put a jump clone in it, but you cannot jump into Pochven. You also cannot bridge into Pochven. You cannot build capitals in Pochven. You cannot jump capitals into Pochven. You can't take capitals into Pochven using the wormholes. So there's a ton of restrictions in here. Subcap PvP only works just like wormhole space otherwise.
Trouble Trave is accusing one of us of ganking day-old characters, and I'm not sure why the day-old character is in Pochven, but they probably deserve what they get.
Pochven, they're probably going to die. Yeah. Like, maybe don't go there.
Yeah. What's this filament? So let's see, anything else?
If you want to live in Pochven, you still need standings. If you want to live in those NPC stations, but I talked about this before, there's no actual benefit to doing that. And the reason why is because every single one of the Pochven like systems connects back to a K-space area. The way that the wormholes work is each Pochven system, where it used to be geographically on the map, within 3 jumps of that, there is a wormhole that exists 100% of the time, and it lets you into that Pochven system. So for Senda, it's like 4 systems, right? You just have to go to those 4 systems, scan down the anomalies, find the wormhole, and you're in Pochven. So if someone really wants to live in Pochven, they don't live in Pochven. They live in one of those K-space locations and then scan up and go into Pochven and go in there and do things. You don't need the standings to effectively live in Pochven, because all those wormholes open inwards into Pochven, meaning you always find them from the outside. And since you can't put a medical clone inside, if you die, you're back on the outside and you get back in. There's no point. There's no reason to have those NPC stations, frankly.
That is a good point. So earlier I mentioned that home field advantage includes reshipping. I make that position obviously as a faction warfare pilot, because that's basically what the fundamentals of station lockout was for in faction warfare, and so famously why structures were so disruptive to faction warfare is the idea of like being able to reship in system is a huge deal versus not being able to do so, having to come from somewhere else, having to constantly come back and in the middle of a fight. That delay in reshipping can be critical when you're trying to hold a key position. The problem with this is that Pochven doesn't really have that outside of like structure conflict. But more importantly, B, bubbles, it's closer to wormhole space. You can't, you get potted, you're now out, and you're the same as any other invader having to find your way back in order to do it. The key is that you can't get dislodged permanently in the same way, because you can always just come in through the gates in the home system if you have that access. But again, the kind of softer bonus of being able to be in the border systems, which was 3.0, which was still a pretty big ask for most groups, that has been taken away. And therefore, that home field advantage has been significantly disrupted in ways that I think that CCP saw as being necessary, but I also feel probably will swing the pendulum too far in the other direction, is what which is basically what we've been, which is what we've been saying. Like, something needed to happen with the gates to allow invaders to have more access in some way, but this feels like it didn't understand the problem.
Yep. I don't think that this is as well thought out as it needed to be. I had a whole write up on opening up the gates in Pochven, like on my CSM, website, and I'll link it here in chat for you guys to see, because it's in here, but it's like they took the first part of it, like, oh, they want to open up the gates to Pochven, and then they stopped. And the thing is it's incredibly important to do this with an amount of care, because Triglavian players have bought into this content. They've bought into it. They've spent a ton of time raising those standings. And to just rip out the rug from underneath them and be like, everyone's equal now, all of your work is worthless. Like, people are bitter about it, man. And they're going to stay bitter about it. And that, I don't think that this is the right choice to do it this way. Open the gates, but give them something for what they've done. Give them some kind of small home field advantage. They have nothing now.
And this isn't going to make anyone else feel good about it. So
No.
I don't think that this fixes anything. But we'll have to see how that plays out. We actually are past our time, but I was going to raid over to Talking Stations, but they're not live yet. Awkward Turtles. I guess we can continue chatting for a few more minutes. Was there anything else that we didn't cover? I thought that there was something else I wanted to circle back with you about all this. Oh, I guess, do you think that, two things, more speculative about the future. One, do you believe that this could potentially be part of a larger set of changes? Like, they did mention that increased accessibility is going to be happening throughout this entire quadrant. So we've got 2 or 3 more major patches, 2 or 3 months of patches.
They said that they wanted to start with increased accessibility in their actual patch notes there. I think that this is probably the accessibility change that they're doing, not technically the one that we wanted. However, like I said, there's conflicting design here. They still have the 7.0 requirement on the home systems, even though you can have, the filaments to get in, the wormholes to get in, to bypass that completely. My guess is whatever they're going to do next is probably expand on that, or maybe give us, as we've seen in Hobo Leagues, hacking and relic sites, I'm hoping. So my guess is that they'll expand on the amount of content, the variety of content that's in here. And my hope is that they expand on what's going on in those home systems, while also adding a variety of more content here and rebalancing those dread sites. I really want to see this place shine. I want to see this region be whole and have a lot of different activities for different kinds of players. I don't like having this monolithic system of one type of content in the region and one thing that you can do, and standings not mattering, and there's no buy-in, and there's no learning about the factions. It just feels very incomplete. So my hope is that they fix all of those things. And if you guys want to look at all the stances that I have on things that I want them to fix, here is where you can read all of that. It's in chat there. I update that pretty regularly. And if there's something on there that you like, tell me. Message me in game on my character Maldavius. Send me an email. If there's something on there you don't like, send me it as well. My biggest thing that I want with CCP is I want better communication with the players. We don't have enough communication on these things. We don't have enough, we want to give them our understanding as players and get them on the same page as us to be able to make good decisions in these cases. So what I want, you guys communicate with me. I'll collect all of that. We'll come up with the best possible way that we can move forward, and then throw it at CCP and hope that they do, the best that they can with it. And that's really what it is. I don't want to sit here and bash CCP for the change. I don't think that there's any reason for that. I think that this didn't hit in the way that they wanted it to, and I think that with more communication, it could have been better.
It does feel like a interim measure, right? Like, this is the left foot, and maybe some of that rogue drone stuff and the Aegis stuff and the other stuff that hasn't really been triggered yet, that'll be the right foot, right? Like, this will make more sense. As I mentioned, they could open up the 3rd gate in the anchorage that goes somewhere else that requires standings to Bouillon, or they could, like, whatever the next thing that happens may be the other half of this equation that makes this make more sense, but that is being extremely optimistic. That being said, I do actually want to ask you, because the other thing that was in the added in today was stuff about the return of resource wars, and it seems to be connected to the construction of these gates. Specifically, there's four. The two that we know about is a potential gate from the rest of Galente space to Solitude, which is famously a large high sec island that is separated by low sec or null sec, depending on which direction you come from. And then also a low sec gate to Stain, which is something that has been memed about on Reddit since Phoebe jump changes. They added in resource wars and also other texts that seem to suggest that the resource wars will be connected to the construction of these gates. I think that this may mean that if these resource war sites, which are basically like combat/mining sites in which you are rated for how fast you mine up enough ore and fill up the orca that's in the site, if completion of those sites are necessary to construction of the gate, then fighting over those sites will be part of the decision of whether or not these gates get constructed.
Yeah, but what are these gates for? Do we know anything about that? Because I haven't seen anything for this.
So Celis Agard has been saying that she wants to make a connection to the main Solitude network for a while. So we don't know if this is going to be a low-sec connection to Solitude or a high-sec to high-sec connection to Solitude. But the risk is it could make Solitude not a high-sec island anymore. It could literally just be connected to the rest of high-sec if this goes through. The gate to Stain is, of course, tactical because Stain is...
Now, are you talking about, could it be a low-sec Stain
yes.
gate? Is that
exactly?
Oh.
Yep.
Oh, so we have one of those in our alliance, by the way. Look up the player. So we already have a low-sec Stain gate inside of Strybog Clade. You should join us.
The April Fool's Day joke about the construction of a low-sec gate to Stain is apparently not a joke, and so there could potentially be a gate from Tashmerkon to Stain. So, but that's one of the 4 gates. So my suspicion is that it also says that the resource war sites are around the location of these gates. So if these gates are happening in lowsec, then that would mean that just like we saw in Invasions Chapter 3, players could come in and stop the efforts of the players trying to build these gates. And so questions about whether or not we should have a gate to Solitude or whether or not we should have a gate to Stain will once again be handed into the hands of the players to be fought over.
If they do something like that, I'll be all on board. And the reason why is anything that players can do en masse as a group to change New Eden forever together generates a massive amount of buy-in. I don't know if it'll do it in the same way that we saw here, like with the invasion, because it was so widespread and it impacted so many areas. Because frankly, the reason the invasion worked is because it grabbed systems at random throughout New Eden, and people had already lived there. It was a disruption of their actual homes. If it's just in one location way out in the armpit of space, most players probably won't engage with it in the same way. So I think that's a good idea. I just don't think it's as good of an idea as the invasions were.
Well, I think that they're experimenting with the idea, right? Like it is a smaller scale thing, but it also it may be that it spends longer in the same area. And what I'd like to see is that either you cross the threshold in the period of time and thus the gate is successfully built, or you do not cross the threshold in that period of time and thus the gate does not get built. And that allows us, because I think that this is part of an overall goal, which you see in Invasions, which is what do players care about? What will players fight over? What will we...
See, I don't think that that's going to have as much widespread interest. And the reason why is because players care about their homes. Many of those people that joined in the invasion stuff were people that had crabbed in those locations or mined in those locations for many years. The reason the invasions worked is because it disrupted where they lived, and they had no choice but to enter the continent and found that they had buy-in and actually, they wanted to fight it because they cared about the places they lived. If it's just 4 locations off in the middle of nowhere, most players aren't going to care about that.
That's why I think that
the majority won't.
I agree. That's why I think that the Solitude Gate is, of the 4, the most interesting. Obviously, the Stain Gate has the most attention because of memes and all that sort of stuff. Oh my God, they're actually making the low-sec gate to Stain. The April Fool's joke is real. But I think
already have one, like I said, so you don't even need to implement it, frankly. We've got it.
I think that when this actually plays out, the one that will be the most contentious will be Solitude, because the people, there are a lot of people who live in Solitude that are incredibly vested in keeping it a high-sec island. And that's my point is that like there will be reasons why people decide that they want the gate or don't want the gate. Just like there's a reason, like, sure, like a lot of the Pochven systems ended up going that way because there were two systems active at the same time. And so they couldn't get both, they couldn't secure both or something like that. But something like Niarja, where everyone cared about, that's still like the highlight of the entire invasion system.
It was the crown jewel. When we took that star, we knew we'd won. It was over for them.
Well, more importantly,
we ripped New Eden in half.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and when people think about invasions, they think about that flashpoint, and it got people's attention on that day in a way that none of the other trigger points did. And so I think that that's what CCP is really trying to key in on is finding out what kind of changes in the universe that they can create, and B, get us to fight over to decide whether or not that change does or doesn't happen.
Yeah. I think that stuff is kind of cool. I think that it would be neat for that to be a thing. But again, I don't think that flashpoint locations like that are interesting to a large amount of players in the same way. It would be interesting for the people that it directly affects, that directly live in the areas where that is occurring. But I don't think it's going to be as interesting as, I wake up one morning after being in the system for 10 years, the skybox is red, what the hell is going on? That's such an easy way to get people involved in the fight and get them to choose sides because they're directly impacted. Like when we took the RVB staging system, that was amazing. You had people just freaking out, fighting over it. When we took each star that is in Pochven now, I was there for like the grand majority of those. It was 75% of them. I was personally on field FCing fleets, taking those stars. That's true. The locals would come out and fight for it or against it, and they got involved, and we got to meet all kinds of new people. That worked because of the amount of widespread disruption that it caused. That disruption is good for the game because it gets people shaken up and trying new things. If it's just in a couple of small locations throughout New Eden, you're going to get minor interest, honestly, and more, like you said, meme interest for the low sex stain gate. But like, I don't know. I don't think that that's as cool as the invasions. I'd like to see it play out. I'd like to be proven wrong. I just don't see it working in the same way. Oh, also, for everybody who is like really into the Triglavian and Edencom style content, there's a Discord right here that I've just linked in chat that is called Praise Zoria. It's this like large community of people that are into that kind of content. Get on there, start talking to people because there's a lot of discourse there. It's very cool.
Yeah. So I also wanted to address, where was it? So it's your fault that it's 40 plus jumps to Ammar now. Yeah. So basically, these two people and a few of the people in chat are probably about a significant percentage of the reason why when you are in Jita and you hit the set destination.
No, I wouldn't say that. Niarja was a massive group effort amongst a lot of different groups. In fact, one of the biggest ones is Test Alliance fought against it happening, and Goonswarm fought for it happening.
Well, like, Zenuri is in the chat, so I that's why I threw him in there.
You had No Block Influence that was very heavily aligned with that, and you had Strybog on field, you had the Kybernauts on field, you had groups like, what was it? What were those guys called? My brain just turned off. We had so many different Triglavian groups involved in that. So no, I wouldn't say that even we were the most major factor.
Yeah,
that was a group effort from the entire community. We all worked together to take that star, and we won it. And we ripped New Eden in half as a result. And that's something that every single one of us is going to remember for the rest of the time that we have Eve to play, is that we changed the game forever together. And that's something that is so cool and such an awesome moment for every one of us.
That's a good point. I really appreciate
as a community, we did this as a community.
I appreciate the correction, actually, because you're absolutely correct. And I was being cheeky, but you're right. It was a monumental effort, and there were people. It was a monumental effort on both sides. It was completely stalemated with both sides pegging all of their points for like 10 hours before it finally started to make progress again. It was an incredible effort by hundreds, if not thousands, of people. But that being said, yeah, it's ultimately. Among other people, our fault as to why. And I got to say, every single time that I'm in Jita and I set destination to Ammar or vice versa, I do that, like, I don't know what I was expecting meme, because it's like simultaneously I'm like, oh God, I have to do 40 jumps, but like, I can't be mad at anyone else. Right. So.
I mean, for me, it was just one of those things. Is like I want to see what happens.
Mhm.
I want to see what happens when we rip New Eden in half. We're gonna do this, and we put everything we could into it. There was a number of those stars I would FC for 16 to 18 hours a day straight, just grind, 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 grind. I loved it because we knew that at the end of the day, when we took that star, it was ours forever. And people were worried that CCP was going to revert it. People were worried that CCP was going to back it down. Like, oh my God, it's causing so much damage to the game. They didn't. They gave us Pochven instead. And that's so cool to like have that kind of control over the story of Eve. And I want more of that in Eve Online. I want more of that for you guys to be able to engage in and leave your mark for everyone else to see and say, I was there. And we need more of that in Eve, frankly. I want more I was there.
That pretty much nails it. That was both, I think, the point of invasion, the point of a lot of these changes that they've been making, and hopefully the point of some of this new stuff that they're coming out with. I hope that Federations, I can't remember. Foundations, I think Foundations.
Yeah.
It really seems like that, 2-3 years ago, they started to figure out what they wanted to do. Took them some time to get there. But in a lot of ways, I feel like we're getting really close to getting there. But at the same time, CCP has a long and proud history of just barely missing the mark. So we will anxiously continue to watch what they do, hope for the best, and, tell them how bad it is when it comes out.
Yep.
Thank Bowser D for the follow. Thank you for joining us down the rabbit hole, which is Eve Online. I think that I'm just going to wrap this up now. I've been Ash Sharathi. My son has been waiting very patiently for me to finish streaming. I probably should. Oh, wait, no. Hold on. Because it's not even... I'm sorry. Hold on. Where was I at? I think I was an hour ahead. We've got more time. Because we're still in the interview time. My bad. Is that true? No. What happened to my time? Did I start early? What's even happening anymore? Hold on.
You all right over there, bud?
I think that we started an hour early, so we can just keep chatting for a little while. That's probably true. Oh, shoot. Well, lucky you. I started an hour early. I thought I started 5 minutes early. I apparently started an hour and 5 minutes early.
Honestly, I think we've covered quite a lot of stuff here too. It's like, you guys, I hope you guys understand most of what my platform is all about. I've plugged it quite a number of times, talked about all this Triglavian stuff. It's very important to me that we continue having content like this, even if it's not Triglavian invasion content. It's very important to me that players are communicated to correctly and in a way that is respectful for the amount of investment that they give in the game. And I want more of this. And I want more communication with CCP. I want more clean communication with CCP too. Throwing in things like this that directly just undermine the efforts of players are things that I don't like to see in any game. And I've seen it played out in many other games before. For those of you guys who don't know, I've been working in the game industry now for about 16 years. So I worked at Blizzard Entertainment. I worked for Amazon Game Studios. I own my own game studio now. And so I've seen a lot of this. I've seen a lot of, you do. I've seen a lot of bad design in my time. I've been on both sides of that fence. I worked on Diablo 3 at launch. Trust me, I know how bad it is when you work on a game that just doesn't hit the mark. It's a nightmare. And these types of actions undermine the player's respect and trust in a game developer. And I don't want that to happen. I really, really don't. And I can see that happening, and I try to keep our guys positive. But CCP, you have to start looking at the other side of these types of changes, rather than just what's going to be the best for the metrics, what's going to be the best for the player's comfort level, what's going to be best for the player's love of the game. You have to look at those, and we can't have things like this happen.
Right. And
why blue with Goons? So, like I said before, Goonswarm helped us take Niarja. And I've actually got a whole write-up about this. Let me send this to you so you guys can see this, because I know a lot of people are like, why are you blue with Goons, Goons, that kind of a thing. Let me pull this up, because I've got an entire write-up for why I did this.
So I also want to, while you're pulling that up, I want to stress that this is not your, we've set aside your formal interview for later. We'll schedule it for another time. I want to be able to give you your hour so we can walk through your platform and talk about all that sort of stuff. So this is not, while Maldavius is running for CSM, this is not his CSM interview. We'll have him back on so that way we can talk about all that. But obviously, a lot of this is very integral to the reason why he wants to run for CSM, and that's why it's important.
Yeah. So I posted it in chat, but I'm going to read it off. So I'm a former Goonwaff line member. I was in Goonwaff for about 4 years in total. A lot of people that I enjoy spending time with stayed over there when I checked out of Eve. I won Eve for a while. I got bored of Nullsec. Nullsec, frankly, is incredibly boring when there's no war going on. Fountain War was awesome. I got to do some really amazing things. My kill board has a whole bunch of wild stuff that I did with a Celestis during the war. It's very fun. But outside of that, you just kind of sit in Nullsec. There's nothing really going on. It's not fun. So I left. During the invasions, Goons helped the Triglavians dominate Niarja and other stars. I got to meet up with a lot of the people that I missed from Goonswarm, the people that I used to fly with. And it meant a lot to see that like our new upstart alliance was interacting with these large null blocks, and they were doing cool things with us and helping to disrupt Eve together. That was rad. After Pochven was formed, I extended an offer to players that had helped us during the invasion to come stay with us and be blue with us. Individual players, not Goonswarm as a whole, just players that we knew and trusted and flew with throughout the invasion. After that, it just kept growing. More and more of them wanted to come hang out with us. You know, we ended up forming a formal agreement with Goonswarm, and it's not all of it. It's not all of the Imperium. It's specific groups inside of that and specific individuals within inside of that to come and play with us and come hang out in Pochven. There's no diplomatic agreement. There's no no major diplomatic agreement. There's no them paying us. There's all these rumors of things of like, oh, they're a goon operation. They were bought by goons. Like none of that is true. We have friends in space that we liked hanging out with throughout the whole invasion. We still fly with them today. And it's really, really meaningful for me to have those types of connections. And Nullsec is boring. Like, let's be honest. It's super boring.
So another piece to that, though, is that you did have a political encounter with a different null block. So it's possible that they were confusing your relationship with, I think, Fraternity, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we punched Fraternity in the face because we wanted to see what would happen. There's a pretty good meme that happened where people thought that we were paid by Goon as a mercenary corp to go attack FRT. No, we wanted to do something dumb. So we found out, and this is cool, you can bridge out of Pochven using Black Ops ships. So we found out you could bridge out, and we were like, well, who's near us? FRT's near us. Let's go attack their gates. And so we did. We jumped out of Pochven using Black Ops, started bashing all of their stuff. And I remember the funniest one is the first one, dude shows up in a rev, in a cap ship, and he goes, friend in local, and we all just cloak up. And like move away. We're like, I don't know. And we just kept doing this kind of stuff, this like harassment stuff. Because what you do is you bridge out and then you use a filament to get back home.
Yeah, whatever.
So you are acting as the Triglavians. You get to go punch the neighbors and then filament home.
That is the part I loved. Hold on, I'm going to interrupt real quick. That is one of the pieces that I've loved the most out of the invasions is that like for the longest time, the Trig carry with them like T1 filaments. And it like I'm like, why are they just seeding all these T1 filaments? And then I realized that's how they get home.
Yep.
Like that is how
they get home.
This is our technology.
That's how we get home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when Pochven happened, it's like, oh my God, we're them now. And I love that fact. I absolutely love that fact.
And we are them. So we Black Ops bridged out. We punched FRT in the face, and then we filamented home. This led to FRT going, where the hell are they coming from? Finding out where we're coming from, and then coming and attacking us. They reffed a whole bunch of our citadels. We found out something really interesting. This is basically worthless now because of the way that the systems work. We found out that Wirashota is broken, which is what our home is. Wirashota is 3 jumps away from Otanumi on the map. And every Pochven system can connect via wormhole to any other system within 3 jumps. Otanumi is inside of Pochven as well. It connects to Otanumi. Otanumi connects back to it. And suddenly you have no K-space wormhole. So we were able to fight back FRT using the game mechanics available to us cleverly and stopped them from invading us until that finally failed. They got our Tatari into Hull. We were forced to make a diplomatic agreement with them, but they were very gracious about it because Noraus himself from FRT, the leader of FRT, fielded that fleet to come fight us himself on grid and then came to talk to us at the table. And the agreement was that we wouldn't touch their structures, they wouldn't touch our structures, and we would give him one of our Astra houses in Wirashota. So we did. In the face of annihilation, we handed him an Astra house. And you know who owns that Astra house now? Us again. because we've been nice to him. We've honored the agreement. We've built up that level of trust, and he handed it back to us as a gesture of good faith. Eve is a game with lots of plays. It is a long game with lots of plays. And who your friends are today could be your enemies tomorrow, and your enemies today could be your friends tomorrow. Always, always, always remember that. And you can do really crazy things and have crazy stories like this. We fought FRT. We technically lost. We lost one of our citadels, and they gave it back to us. It's awesome. It's such a cool engagement with them. And we loved it, too. We had like 150 Baltics on grid. It was insane.
And that goes back to, by the way, some people are telling me to look at Discord. One of the problems is that while I'm showing his camera, I can't actually flip to other places in Discord. But what was I saying? I think I lost my point. I'm sorry. But I think that it's really important to remember, like, or rather, I don't like how frequently the efforts of Edencom and Triglavians and Pochven, all of this stuff gets undermined, gets spoken down to. You know, the victories of Edencom during the invasions were monumental. They got twice as many fortresses as there were liminals. They got tons of minor victories. They are the only, you know, their side took a system that started to go into the other side, which is something that we were never capable of doing. And in fact, the Triglavian side had decided that it was impossible for us to do that. And Edencom did it. Like their effort cannot be, you know, overstated. And yet everybody feels like it was worthless. Everybody feels like they didn't get anything. Those 54 or 53 fortresses, like, doesn't feel like a reward to them. And they earned and fought for every single one of them. And so, like, it upsets me when what's stymieing things, what's causing things to not be as exciting as it is not what is or isn't actually happening, but our understanding about it, right? Like, us trying to convince each other that Pochven is dead or not interesting or not worth looking into. The idea that Edencom, you know, was only siding with the status quo, or the fact that the Triglavians were scripted to win. Like, all of these things may have some degree to truth to them or not, but I think that they all undermine the true value of this, which is that in this silly video game that whose mechanics are in the moment to moment kind of rudimentary, within this world, we were able to reshape the universe in a way that has never been done in Eve and possibly never been done in video game history before. And I don't want that to go unappreciated, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's so many things here that are like, people have all these stories of the things that they've done. And I've always seen Eve as Dungeons and Dragons in space. It really is. We're all role playing out the characters that we have. We're all writing the stories that we want to have. And having game mechanics that augment that are incredibly important. But if those game mechanics get in the way of a player telling their story because they feel disillusioned with it, that's incredibly devastating. And I could see that happening for the Edencom players right now. And I can see that happening for us out in Pochven because of the changes to the gates. I don't want that. I want the Edencom players to have a reason to fight us. I want Pochven to have a reason for Draglavian players to be in it. Like, there needs to be something that goes along with that so we can keep fighting each other. This is the coolest red versus blue engagement like that I've ever seen in Eve, ever. And it's really, really neat. And I don't want it to be a wasted opportunity.
Did you see the Imager link that was posted by Nth Dimensional a few seconds ago?
It's just a drone.
Right.
Drone supercarrier.
But it's the new wreck, I think, right?
Is that actually the new wreck?
I'm not sure. I think that's what they're suggesting. I don't know if this is because there were. So basically, that's part of the problem is that the rogue drone rats end up looking like supers anyway. So I'm not 100% convinced that this is one of the new wrecks, but it is a way that they could have used the new wrecks. But I would have expected us to see changes to the rats, like reassigning the wreck to them.
If they actually just put like collidable wrecks, like
super,
I don't
not
think
as cool.
that's a new. Yeah, this looks like it's just the. It looks like it's just the drone supercarrier like rat wreck.
I agree. I don't think
there's anything new here.
I don't think this is special yet, but it is. That is one of the interesting things about right now is that like any given thing, it's like, is this the exciting thing? Like we don't know. Like
Yeah,
But,
see, guys from our alliance are saying that's not new. It's not new.
okay, cool.
So yeah,
No.
that's old stuff. I was gonna say, I was like, this just looks like normal drone stuff. I kind of, I mean, I guess we live in Pochven, so like we see this kind of stuff all the time. So other people say like, what is that? So I forget.
It is worth, there are new things being put in that were put in today. And we don't know how they're going to be triggered. But my expectation is that, and this is very consistent with the way that CCP does things, they'll deploy it today and they'll bring the event live tomorrow or the next day. And with Thursday being the 6th, which is technically the anniversary, the start of Capsuleer Day, it makes absolute sense that at least the Equilibrium of Man stuff will begin playing out then. It is unknown whether or not the new Rogue Drone stuff or the new Aegis stuff is available now or later. Like, so it is true. Like, if you see anything, report it to me, but also realize that there's I'm constantly, every day I'm getting reports from things like, hey, mysterious deaths in this nullsec pocket, or, we saw Trig here, or, all that stuff. Most of the time it's people just reporting things that are already known, quirks of the system. But at this point, this more than ever is one of those times to be paying attention to things changing, things being different, or clues that Edencom or the Triglavians are doing something. Is Pochven getting new content? Icon 911 keeps asking.
We know that there's going to be changes in the next, in the quadrant. We know that CCB has announced that there's going to be changes to Pochven. The first thing that they did was unlocking the gates today, which is, a mixed bag. It's a double-edged sword, and it's let a lot of players feel very disillusioned with their Triglavian standings. I don't think it's the right way to do it. What I want, as I've said before, a variety of PvE content. I want data and relic sites in there. I want money drained out of the dread sites and put into other PvE activities in there, because frankly, the other PvE sites are trash. They give 6 million ISK each, and they're not worth putting 1 billion ISK on grid to get 6 million. It's not a good thing.
Right.
And then, if they can add those types of things, just a variety of content, the region's going to feel much better, like infinitely better, just having some other things to do, frankly. It needs to not be dread sites the game. No one wants that. And what do you mean by world arcs being broken? They work fine. There's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah, if well, I had heard something was wrong with the dread sites or the world arc sites, but maybe not. I can't remember any of the details. Oh, the arc doesn't jump out? Well, that shouldn't make any difference to the actual execution of it. You just don't get to see the cool animation. You would still get the payout.
It still pays out and does everything it needs to.
Yeah, I don't think the golems are really worried about whether or not they get to see the animation again.
Well, the golems don't have to be worried about anything. They're dead.
Well, somebody mentioned that they're back. So, I mean, take 3, I guess.
They've died again. You should check Z-Kill.
Well,
Golem guy's gone, dude.
Flea Harvey Oswald saying that the golems are running today.
Yeah, he just keeps dying. He keeps losing them and then coming back. Like, the guy's losing like 50 bill every time. It's insane.
Which, given that fact, that leads me to suspect that just gives you an idea of the value that site means for him. If you go back to that 3.1 trillion or whatever that was earned total in invasion payouts, how much of that is in that World Arc site that's basically all just going to him? Clearly, it's enough, because it's not just the payouts, but it's also the Zoria guns, the Rad Sinks. All those things are extremely valuable. So, even if he manages to run 3 or 4 of those World Arc sites before his entire Marauder fleet gets taken out, it might still be profitable for him. So clearly, there's a reason why he keeps reassembling his fleet, in spite of the fact that Marauders are extremely expensive right now.
Yeah.
Link the Golem guy's kill board. I don't have it right now. Also, the DEDLP that come from those sites, and to the pro Edencom guys that run sites, which really the World Arc and the Dreads are the major ones, that DEDLP is worth an insane amount now. comparatively, because
yeah, we don't get any of that either.
yeah, there's nobody running emerging conduits or something like that. So the balance between the payouts that the Trig get and the balance the Edencom guys get was based on, the old availability of Edencom DDLP, which was oversaturated by people running emerging conduits and stuff. But since basically the way to get DDLP has been all but completely cut off, that means that those who do run Pro Edencom sites, the LP that gets out of that is extremely valuable, because the stuff you can buy very easily on the LP store with that LP just immediately turns around and sells for quite a bit. Stuff like Pyro. Is there, I think we're actually wrapping things up for real. So is there anything else that we want to think about since I got you here? Anything else since the last time we've talked?
I think the biggest thing is that, we will weather this storm. Any of you Strybog guys that are out there, we're going to weather the storm of Pochven. We're going to keep striving to live in this place. We're going to keep thriving out here and doing all the things that we do. And I'm very happy with you bloodthirsty triangles. You guys are kicking a lot of butt out there. I'm really, really excited about it. We've gotten hundreds of kills today. It's a bloodbath. Our home system of Wirashoto was the 17th most dangerous system in all of EVE Online today. It's probably going to get even worse by the end of the day, so I'm waiting to see the rest of it, and I got to get back out and start getting more kills, frankly. Outside of that, if you guys are interested in Triglavian content, or if you're interested in learning about my CSM platform, here's the website, which is maldavius.space, maldavius.space. So you can read all about it there. And if you have ideas for the game, if you have concerns about the game, email me in-game with an email at Maldavius. I read all of them. I sit there and painstakingly go through every amount of feedback that I can get, and I usually reply to people with all of my thoughts and ideas for that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So a couple things about that. First of all, can you shoot me in DM like all of the different links that you've posted, so that way I can add them all into the YouTube links when I post it on YouTube? And then also I want to address, because there's this thing about, he's getting a second interview. I have a lot of people that are running for CSM that are on other episodes. Arcia was on last week talking about lore stuff, even though she's running for CSM. We had Dutch Gunner on earlier talking about the changes this week, just because he's running for CSM. These people who are running for CSM are also, just generally speaking, interested in talking about EVE. So, we will give him, basically every candidate who's interested is getting a very specific set of conditions with the 1 hour interview that is set aside and put on YouTube and all that sort of stuff. So that will still be done. This was just me and Maldavius talking. And it just so happens that he is both recruiting and going for the CSM.
Yeah, come fight us in Pochven, or join us. One of the two. We like that.
Glorification of the fit and mortification of the unfit.
Yep. Heck yeah. Come prove yourselves. Especially in Wirashoto right now. I hear it's hopping.
All right. Well, if you want to bounce off, I can do my wrap-up stuff for the night and take on. Thank you for coming, and we will talk very soon.
Yep. Nice seeing you guys, and thank you for having me on.
All right. Let's see. Guest and logo. All right. And I have been Ashtarothi. This has been the Tuesday show. It has been actually a longer show than I expected. But it was because I was very excited to give you guys all of the information about today. I will check the DM now. We're going to have to do that for next time, because I need to have it preloaded on my OBS before I can run it like that. But beyond that, this has been the Tuesday show. Every Tuesday we strive to answer the question of what has changed this week. This week we have had a lot of changes and a lot more to talk about, and we have had a great time breaking all that down. We will be posting it on YouTube later today in case you missed anything, including the breakdown of all of the events last week. For the rest of the week, I've got 2 interviews slated tomorrow for CSM interviews. You can follow my Twitter for more information about when those are going to be. And then, of course, I'll be slating more CSM interviews as I can schedule them. And on Friday, we'll be talking about what to do this weekend for the Friday show. It has been an incredible time. I especially want to thank my Patreons and all of these followers that I've been getting. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be ignoring all of you guys during the shows, but I want to be able to give my guests and the YouTube viewers an ability to not be disrupted by shtick all the time. But thank you all for joining us down the rabbit hole, which is EVE Online, that followed today. I hope I didn't miss any subs. I think I caught I caught recons. But also not just the subs, which have been awesome the last week, but the number of people who have joined my Patreon, I really, really appreciate it. I'm trying to add the tokens on all of the YouTube videos to make sure to give them recognition. But you know, in a very real way, it is the reason why I'm able to do this. And so, you know, I've been asked whether or not I want to work for CCP or be on the CSM or all that kind of stuff. And honestly, if given the opportunity for simply working for you guys on behalf of the community, that is my choice. And it's a dream come true, and I appreciate it. So we're going to keep the train rolling as we move forward from here. EVE Universe is live and kicking. And so we will be back. Please, 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 if you want to support, feel free to do all the normal things. But right now I'm asking that you do actually subscribe to my YouTube channel, which the links should be down below. And if you can, watch the video. If you've missed a video or an episode, check them out there, because I need to get my views up before people like me. So that would sure do mean a lot to me. Hey, that worked. Sweet. Thanks, Nth Dimensional. In other news, please follow Nth Dimensional. Thank you for hanging out in chat. Anybody else who's here that is a streamer, go ahead and X up and give them a follow. And Maldavius does stream, but he mostly streams game design stuff. So if you're interested in that, you should check it out. My Twitter, the links for my Twitter should be down below as well. But I do my best to keep Twitter as up to date as possible. So if you want to keep, you know, like abreast of all of these different changes that are happening, they end up being on my Twitter. It's a great source of that kind of information. Sudakon, thank you for joining us down the rabbit hole, which is EVE Online. No, I'm just wrapping up Doc.game, but I'll be I think Talking in Stations is going live very soon, and that's who I'm going to be raiding over to. Like any second now, they should be already live, to be honest. But Doc.game is another streamer, so while he's here, if you haven't yet, clicked on his little name and send him a follow as well. He's been streaming EVE quite a bit recently and he's been raising money for St. Jude, which is awesome. So if you haven't by chance, go ahead and, you know, send Doc.game a follow. Of course, man. Of course. Let's see. Anything else before I close things out? Anything else I'm missing? Anything else I'm missing? If you want to get to know more about the EVE lore or what's been going on, I recommend checking out the Empyrean Age and Templar 1. The books, they are available on Amazon. Templar 1 is available on Audible. There's links to all of that stuff down below, as well as the EVE source book, which is a great place to get like information about the state of the universe, especially in, well, like the lore and the state of the empires. And I think that a lot of that's going to be important as Federation goes forward. I'm very excited to see further Oh, they're starting 30 minutes late today. They just might not get my raid then. Oh no. I'm already an hour over, man. We gotta find somebody else to raid then, unfortunately. I think that we should be able to run a raid over to Ron. It's a good thing that Doc showed up, because then I don't raid over him. The Burning Life book is also really good, although I'm not 100% sure how well that, or how much it plays into the current ongoing story. There's also Fiction Portal, the Fiction Portal, which is fiction.eveonline.com. And then I also have the Precursor Crisis document, which is an immense document that I posted Yeah, all right, I'll hold it open. We'll hold it open until TIS goes live, just to make sure that we can raid over to them. So if you wanna be done, Doc, you can raid over, and then I'll just raid talking stations when they go live, unless you want to wait. But the precursor document, basically what I've done is any of the text in game involving the Triglavians, all of the data streams, any rats or item descriptions, etc., all of that has been collected into one document, so that way I can access it, analyze it, and hunt for things. Thanks, Nick. So the Discord link that Nick just posted is for TIS. And then in addition to that, since I'm going over all of the big stuff that we have for what's going on, this is the Precursor Crisis playlist. So a little while ago, I pulled together a 2-hour playlist of all of the different trailers and videos that CCP and Arataka Research Consortium have put out that are related to the Precursor Crisis. So anything involving the Triglavians, the Drifters, the Sleepers, or that kind of stuff throughout time, all the way from the original opening to Apocrypha, Empyrean Age, through Caroline Star, and into the modern age. And then finally, on the Talking Stations video or channel on YouTube, I published a video called "Who Are the Drifters," which I just posted, which is also in chat. So there's a lot going on. It looks like it's going to be interesting and rewarding to get involved in it. Why did the Myrmidon not shoot the Capsuleer in Eve Templar 1? Well, the Myrmidon was the Capsuleer, I think you're talking about. So the Capsuleer, who, by the way, the Capsuleer in Templar 1 is actually from Empyrean Age. But he actually was flying the Myrmidon, and he's the one that refused to shoot at the civilian transport. And he kind of has a moment of madness, where he can hear the spirits of the ship or whatever, and so he chooses not to attack. It's unknown whether or not this is just general Capsuleer craziness, or if that there was no sign or indication that was some sort of reason why that happened beyond just the strain and stress of all of the events that happened to him in Empyrean Age, and the strain of being asked to fire on what was obviously a civilian vessel with non-military, civilians involved. So it was a questionable act in the first place. Right. So he was able, he felt he could hear the voices of those dying within the structure, within the thing. And so he ended up actually, he engaged the ships that were engaging the transport. So not only did he not shoot the transport, but he destroyed or attacked the ships that were attacking the transport, holding them long enough for the transports to get away. And then he escaped. Fit of morality. Morality and Capsuleers don't really mix well, unfortunately. Oh boy, oh boy. Let me see. I shot Matterall a question. Let's see. Depending on the Capsuleer, I don't. That's true, but I mean, overall, we are absolutely monsters. Ancient Black Bear, thank you for joining us down the rabbit hole, Eve Online. All you guys, thank you. So Capsuleers are one of the themes of Eve Online as a sci-fi universe is the dehumanization of post-humanism, right? The idea that being divorced from mortality, just the simple act of becoming immortal, is almost improcessable to the human mind, and transforms us. All of our values are different. All of our calculations about human life and about money and power is all very, very different to those of us who are beyond death, and the impact that has as a post-human creature. And that's also why a lot of the enemies that we see are not aliens, but are other post-human entities, right? People like the Triglavians, people like the Drifters. Although the Drifters technically aren't necessarily post-human, they're artificial sapiens. But the idea is that we're exploring, sci-fi allows us to explore aspects about our characters and about who we are in a relatively safe environment that isn't like the modern day. It's divorced enough from our modern concepts that we're able to explore things about our society and about ourselves. And EVE Online does a good job with doing that. And again, one of the main themes is post-humanity, the cost of post-humanity and the impact of post-humanity. And the Other and the Triglavians both represent potentially cautionary tales of what happens when you lose tether with that which makes you human. So that's one of the things I really, really love about the EVE Online story, and why I think it's important, and why I'm trying to get people interested and invested in the universe, to understand that there is more to learn out there. There is more to discover, more to decipher, and more to understand that we just haven't figured out yet. So I hope that this is all of this inspires you guys to engage even deeper in EVE Online. And if you need help engaging in EVE Online, the Convocation of Empyreans is here to help you maximize player engagement with EVE Online. So if you have any questions, comments, if you're a new player, you're interested in engaging with content, and you don't necessarily want all of the fetters of being like in a null block or something crazy like that, you want to be in a place that'll let you access the content that you want to do without asking you to do what you don't want to do, joining Convocation of Empyreans is a great idea. All right. I think that they may be live now. I think that I've sung and danced for long enough. Let's see. Hey, awesome. Great. All right. I have been Ash Sharathi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I've been here to put EVE into context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you so much for this. This has been an extra long Tuesday episode for an extra exciting week in EVE Online. We are now going to be raiding over to Talking Stations to get even more news and information, their daily show. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your support. And until next time, I'll see you in space.
Bring on the wrecking machine. 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 Bring on the w voices.